Hey friends, welcome. What if Sakura was sells herself to Naruto movie? But before we start, if you want more amazing stuff like this, then be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Also, if possible, share this video with your friends. Now, without wasting any more time, let's begin the story. It was a bright and beautiful day in Konoha. The sun was shining, the birds were singing, and Tsunade was in a drunken rage. Those damn elders are pissing me off. I've got enough to worry about without them on my ass about that Uchiha brat. I know the village is broke. The blonde-haired woman yelled, reaching for her sake. Tsunade-sama, please calm down. Shizune exclaimed, drinking and yelling isn't going to solve anything. Tsunade let out an angry sigh and put her head in her hands. I know, we need to find a solution, and quickly, the village can't go on like this for much longer, the Hokage said, shaking her head slightly in an attempt to clear it. Shizune walked over to her superior, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. She knew that Tsunade was stressed, and for good reason. Quite frankly, everyone in the village was under a lot of stress. The Fourth Shinobi World War had come to an end a month prior, and that was definitely something to be happy about, however. The Leaf Village had been almost completely decimated in all of the fighting. Rebuilding the village, as well as helping neighboring villages rebuild, left Konoha almost completely broke. Konoha wasn't the only village that suffered, nations all over were suffering, so there was a lot of competition for missions. Because missions were so few and far between, Konoha was having trouble supporting itself in the aftermath of the war. The village elders were far from happy because of this, and were constantly pestering Tsunade to come up with a solution. Not only were they pestering the Hokage about a solution for the village's money problems, but they also wanted her to decide on a suitable punishment for a certain Uchiha. Tsunade sat up, took a sip of her sake and eyed her attendant. I understand the elders being upset about our financial situation, because I am too. What I don't understand is their ongoing grudge against Sasuke Uchiha. The brat has done some very questionable things, but he more than made up for it during the war, and now he's back. I put the kid on probation, and that should be enough. The blonde said. I agree, Tsunade-sama. However, Sasuke did betray the village and became an international criminal. Even if he is loyal now, many of the villagers still don't trust him, Shizune replied. There was really nothing Tsunade could say to argue, because she knew Shizune was right. Sasuke did play a huge role in defeating Madara and saving the village. However, while most villagers appreciated his efforts and decided to forgive the Uchiha, others did not, upon hearing of the Uchiha's return to the village and his lenient punishment. Some villagers took it upon themselves to come up to her office and give her a piece of their mind. The elders were also enraged and demanded that Tsunade come up with a second punishment. Those corrupt old bastards just make me so angry. Now that I know about the role they played in the Uchiha massacre, I want to prosecute them so damn badly. Tsunade screeched. You know you can't do that, Tsunade-sama, Shizune said glumly. Yeah, I know, it drives me crazy, the blonde replied with a scowl. When Tsunade finally found out the truth about the Uchiha massacre, her first instinct was to strip the elders of their position and prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law. Unfortunately for her, there was nothing she could do. The massacre had been ordered by the elders and approved by the third Hokage himself. No laws had been broken, and her hands were tied. That realization made her feel sick to her stomach. So what are you going to do? Shizune asked. Well, I need to find a way to bring our village out of debt, as well as find an appropriate punishment for Sasuke. I don't know what to do for either of those things, Tsunade replied. Suddenly, the door to Tsunade's office burst open, revealing a certain blonde-haired knucklehead. Yo, Bachan. Naruto greeted, shutting the door and strutting across the room. How many times have I told you not to call me that? The Hokage growled. Naruto stopped in front of her desk and raised an eyebrow, pouting slightly. What's the matter, Bachan? You haven't gotten pissed about my calling you that for a while now, you going through menopause. Tsunade promptly grabbed her nearly empty sake bottle and chucked it at the blonde's head. Naruto yelped and ducked just in time before the bottle crashed against the door to the office. What the hell? He screeched. Tsunade-sama, was that really necessary? Shizune exclaimed. Now is not the time to push my buttons, Tsunade seethed. Shizune sighed and turned to Naruto, who had backed away slightly in fear. I'm terribly sorry, Naruto-san. Tsunade-sama is under a lot of stress right now, she said apologetically. It's not your fault, Ni-chan, Naruto replied, smiling at the brunette before turning back to Tsunade. What are you so stressed about? You know our financial situation, Naruto. The elders have been pressuring me to come up with a solution, as well as an additional punishment for Sasuke, Tsunade replied. That's already on probation until further notice, what else could they want? Naruto asked with a frown. If they had their way, Sasuke would be dead or in prison. Unfortunately for them, there's no way in hell that'll happen, not after his actions during the war, Tsunade replied. Do you have any ideas in mind on how to solve this? Shizune asked. I can help you come up with something. I mean, I am the Hokage in training, after all, Naruto said with a grin. But you are, Tsunade smirked, so tell me, what did you have in mind? The grin left Naruto's face, and he rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. I'm actually not so sure, whenever I needed extra cash, I'd sell something of mine, too bad I don't have anything worth an arm and a leg. Tsunade suddenly froze, and a look of realization dawned on her face. Naruto and Shizune stared at the Hokage, wondering what she could possibly be thinking. Naruto, you just gave me an idea, Tsunade said. I did. He did. Yes, he did, we can hold an auction, the Hokage stated. An auction? But Tsunade-sama, what could we possibly have to auction off? The village no longer has anything of value, Shizune replied. Oh yes, we do, we have many young, handsome ninja that are very eligible bachelors, Tsunade said, smirking. Wait a minute, you can't possibly be thinking. That's exactly what I'm thinking, Konoha will hold a festival, and during that festival, we'll hold an auction, people will come from villages all over, just for a chance to date our shinobi, the highest bidder will be the winner, she explained. Bachan. I think this is all of the sake talking, Naruto said slowly. Yeah, probably, but that's beside the point, not only will this help solve the village's money problems, but it'll solve our other problem too, Tsunade replied. What other problem? Shizune asked. Sasuke, of course, I've decided that he'll be one of the ninja we auction off, Tsunade said. What? Hey, wait a minute. Sasuke may be a team, but he's still my best friend, you can't just auction him off like that. Naruto exclaimed. I'm going to have to agree with Naruto-san, I don't see how this could possibly work, Shizune said, concerned. Tsunade reached for her sake, but frowned upon remembering she'd thrown the bottle across the room, she really needed to reel in her temper, she looked up at Naruto and Shizune, entirely unconcerned, Sasuke would never willingly go along with this, which is exactly why I'm making him do it, we bring in money for the village, Sasuke gets punished, and the elders get off my back. It's the perfect plan, Tsunade stated. You're seriously going to let Sasuke be auctioned off to some random girl? Naruto asked with a frown. I highly doubt we'll have to worry about just any girl getting their hands on him, Tsunade said with a smirk, thinking of a certain pink-haired student of hers. As if on cue, said Pinkette and a blonde-haired girl entered the office, Tsunade-sama, Ino and I have a question about this patient. Oh, hey Naruto. Sakura greeted. Hey there, Sakura-chan, Ino-chan. Naruto greeted back with a grin. Hello, you two, you have perfect timing, Tsunade said. We do? What's going on? Ino asked. You two may want to take a seat, Shizune warned, pulling up 2 chairs for the girls. The girls cautiously walked over and took a seat in front of Tsunade's desk, not knowing what to expect, knowing Tsunade, it could be anything. I've come up with a solution to the village's financial problems, Tsunade stated. Really? That's great news. I know you've been really stressed about it lately, Sakura replied with a smile, what did you come up with? We're going to auction off Konoha's most eligible bachelors, she said simply. The room immediately went silent, Sakura and Ino simply stared at their superior, wondering if they'd heard right. Or what? Ino asked, dumbfounded. Konoha is going to hold a festival, and people from far and wide are going to compete for a chance to date our shinobi, as punishment, one of these shinobi will be our very own Sasuke Uchiha, the Hokage explained. With all due respect, Tsunade-sama, I don't think this is. That sounds like an amazing idea. Ino exclaimed. The Pincat looked over at her best friend, glaring daggers at the blonde, how could Ino possibly think this was a good idea? Sakura huffed and turned back to her master. No, it's not. We can't just auction off Sasuke-kun like that. Sakura exclaimed. Why not? You're not jealous, are you? Tsunade smirked. Sakura immediately shut up, a blush rising to her cheeks, she hoped nobody noticed, but that hope was dashed as her master's smirk widened, oh of course I'm not jealous. I just feel that this is morally wrong. She stuttered. Oh, lighten up, Sakura-chan. This could be fun. Who knows, maybe you could be the highest bidder for Sasuke-kun, Ino teased. Sakura shook her head, trying to will her blush to go away and failing miserably, I'm not bidding on anyone, Sakura growled. Try not to be mad, Sakura-chan. I know it sounds a little crazy, but it's definitely not the worst punishment for Sasuke team, Naruto said, hoping to make Sakura feel better. Ino nodded her head in agreement, Naruto is right, besides, you can deny it all you want, but you know having a chance to date Sasuke-kun is a dream come true for you, she said, smirking at her best friend. The Pincat glared daggers at the blonde, shut up. I'm sorry, Sakura, but the decision has been made, 2 weeks from now, we'll be holding our festival, Tsunade stated. But Tsunade-sama, Sakura shouted. No buts. Tsunade barked, effectively silencing her student before turning to Shizune. Shizune, I want you to make a list of the most eligible bachelors in Konoha and tell them to come to my office immediately, she ordered. Shizune nodded and bowed at her master. Of course, Tsunade-sama, she said, immediately heading to the other side of the room to begin making her list. The Hokage turned back to her pupils. I'm sure you two can figure out the answer to your question yourselves. You're smart girls, go back to the hospital and see the rest of your patients. You're dismissed, she commanded. Ino immediately got up and bowed. Sakura on the other hand stayed in her chair for a few moments, glaring at her master. When she came into the office to ask the Hokage a simple question, she never expected to hear of this crazy scheme. She was shocked, disappointed, and quite frankly, jealous. Sakura slowly stood up and silently walked out of the office without another word. Ino following closely behind. It didn't take long for Shizune to make out her list and send for Konoha's bachelors. All of the shinobi entered the room one by one, each wondering why they were summoned so suddenly. Alright, before we begin, I'm going to take roll, Kakashi Haddock, Tsunade called. Ah. Sasuke Uchiha. HN. Shikamaru Nara. Yep. Tiba Inuzuka. Here. Sai. I'm here. Satisfied, Tsunade folded her hands on her desk and regarded the shinobi in front of her, while Naruto and Shizune looked on in silence. I'm sure you're all wondering why I've gathered you here so suddenly. I'll make this quick, I have a mission for you all, she said. What kind of mission? Kiba asked. Tsunade went on to explain how the village had been having a financial crisis in the aftermath of the war and how the village would be hosting a festival. She informed the shinobi of the auction and exactly what it entailed, as well as letting Sasuke know that participating would be the second part of his punishment. After she finished explaining everything, she sat back in silence, letting the information sink in. You can't be serious, Sasuke growled, incredibly annoyed. He couldn't believe this. He didn't want to be auctioned off to some annoying girl that he didn't even know. He had no interest in anyone, and he really didn't see that changing anytime soon. The only person he felt even slightly comfortable with winning the auction would be Sakura, and Shed seemed to be avoiding him like the plague recently. I'm very serious, Tsunade replied. There's no way in hell I'm doing this, the Raven hissed. Listen up, Uchiha, I'm doing you a favor. If it was up to the elders, they'd have your head. You should be grateful it's this and not jail. Tsunade boomed. Why would I want to date some random, annoying girl? Sasuke yelled. Because it'd be good for you. Maybe you can find yourself a nice wife and get to work on some Uchiha babies. The blonde yelled back. DCH, was all the Uchiha said. He looked away, knowing there was nothing he could do or say to change the Hokage's mind. Sure, had wanted to revive the Uchiha clan, but not like this. He wanted a strong, intelligent, kind woman to revive the clan with, not some stupid, weak village girl. He sighed to himself, resigning himself to his fate. Who knows, maybe some good will come out of this, he thought. This whole thing is so troublesome, Shikamaru muttered. Question, why isn't Naruto a part of this auction? Has the Hokage in training, wouldn't he be perfect for something like this? Kiba asked. Naruto grinned at the Inuzuka and shook his head, nope. I'm not a part of this auction because I've already got myself a woman. Naruto exclaimed. Who would that be? Kiba asked. None other than Hinata-chan. The blonde said, grinning from ear to ear. What? You're dating Hinata-chan and neither of you told me? Came Kiba's shocked reply. Wow, I'm surprised, I never thought Dickless would actually get himself a girlfriend, Sai chimed in. Hey. What is it with you and the dick comments, you asshole? Hoping to defuse the situation before it escalated any further, Kakashi stepped forward and spoke up. Alright, you guys, that's enough. I know you may not like this, but we need to make the best of it, and that includes getting along, he said calmly. Thank you, Kakashi, pipe down, all of you, also, Naruto, you will in fact be part of this auction, Tsunade said. What? But I have a girlfriend already. Naruto bellowed. Your girlfriend comes from the main house of one of the most prestigious clans in Konoha. I'm sure she has enough money to outbid everyone else, Tsunade smirked. Well, that's greedy, Shikamaru muttered. Being philanthropic won't pay the bills, Tsunade retorted. Don't I get a say in this, Naruto screeched. No, you don't, this is a direct order to all of you and an official mission. 2 weeks from today, we'll be holding the festival, as well as the auction. The preparations are to begin immediately. You're all dismissed, the Hokage said, leaving no room for argument. The shinobi that had been summoned bowed to the Hokage and left the room, except for Sasuke and Naruto. The Uchiha stood in front of Tsunade, Naruto, and Shizune, and glared daggers at all three of them. I can't believe you're making me do this, he muttered. I can't believe you're still in my office, Tsunade retorted. Tsunade-sama, be nice. Shizune scolded. Nice, my ass, Tsunade muttered. Naruto immediately groaned in disgust. I really don't want to think about your ass, Bachan, he said, still bitter about being forced into this auction. Tsunade growled and glared at the blonde, beyond fed up with everyone. That's it. Get the hell out of my sight, all of you. She yelled. Knowing better than to argue, the 3 other occupants of the room quickly shuffled out the room, not wanting to face the Hokage's wrath. Sasuke walked out of the Hokage tower and into the direction of his apartment. He walked slowly, trying to let what had just happened sink in. So, he was going to be auctioned off and forced to go on a date with some random girl. Great, he supposed it wasn't as bad as going to jail, though the more he thought about it, jail may have been better than going on a date with some annoying girl. I'd certainly rather rot in a jail cell than have Karen try to seduce him all of the damn time. He could only hope that the woman who won the auction would be someone worth his time, though with his luck, this was bound to end badly. Sasuke sighed to himself as he made his way into his apartment. This would certainly be interesting. It was the night before the festival, and preparations had been going swimmingly. Team 7, joined by Hinata, walked through downtown Konoha, which was where the festival was to take place. Sakura gazed at the pretty lanterns and elaborate decorations that lined the streets and smiled to herself. While she was still upset that Sasuke and her friends were to be auctioned off just to make a quick buck, she couldn't help but think that maybe the festival would be a good thing after all. It was hard not to think that way when she stopped to appreciate the work that went into preparing for it. The sound of a certain blonde-haired knucklehead's voice dragged her out of her thoughts. "Will you quit complaining already, you team?" "No, I won't quit complaining. I can't believe I'm actually participating in this garbage," Sasuke grumbled. "Yeah, I've been bitching about it ever since you found out. You need to prepare yourself because this is just another challenge in our rivalry," Naruto declared. "To think that you could possibly rival me in anything is laughable," Sasuke muttered. "What was that? This auction is going to determine who is better, once and for all," the blonde exclaimed. Sakura was about to yell at both of them to shut the hell up before Hinata chimed in. "Then Naruto-kun, please calm down, you and Uchiha-san are both great shinobi," Hinata said quietly, hoping her boyfriend would calm down. Sasuke simply rolled his eyes and tried to ignore the blonde as he felt a headache coming on. The Raven was more than up for the challenge, and Naruto knew it. Even so, Sasuke still wasn't keen on having a bunch of girls ogle at him like some prize to be won. Kakashi, who had been walking beside the teen silently until now, chuckled at his students. "You two will never determine who's better, y'all always find something else to compete over," he said, thinking of his own rivalry with Guy. "Sasuke-kun, I know you're less than thrilled about participating in this auction, but just try thinking about how good it'll be for the village. It's just a couple of dates, how bad could it be?" Sakura said, trying to cheer Sasuke up. Sasuke said nothing to the pincat, instead simply opting to continue looking straight ahead with a sour look on his face. Sakura sighed to herself. Yes, she was trying to cheer Sasuke up, but she was also trying to cheer herself up as well. The pincat had been dreading this auction ever since she'd first found out about it in Tsunade's office. Sakura immediately said she'd never be a part of such a thing, but now she wasn't so sure. The thought of some random girl winning Sasuke drove her crazy. As much as she'd like to deny it, she'd been trying to get over Sasuke recently, but she was beginning to come to the realization that it was impossible. After all of this time, after all that Sasuke did, she still loved him. Kakashi noticed the pincat looking down and deep in thought, and he was pretty sure he knew the direction her thoughts were going. He lightly placed a hand on her shoulder, and she looked up at him in surprise. Kakashi gave her a smile, his eye crinkling. No words were needed. Sakura knew that he was trying to reassure her. She gave her sensei a grateful smile in return. The group finally stopped at a small cafe as Naruto wanted food and the rest of the group was getting hungry as well. After everyone ordered their food, they sat and enjoyed some tea while they waited. It's hard to believe the festival is seriously happening tomorrow, the time has gone by so fast. Hinata-chan, you promised to outbid everyone, right? Naruto exclaimed. Hinata smiled and nodded at the blonde, a blush adorning her cheeks. I promise, Naruto-kun, it'll definitely outbid everyone, she said. Okay, good. It's your duty as a girlfriend to outbid all of those ugly hags for me. Naruto. Sakura screeched, punching the blonde in the arm hard. Ow. Sakura-chan, that hurt. Naruto pouted. That's no way to talk, you idiot. Sakura growled. Sakura-chan. Naruto. People are staring, Kakashi said. The teens looked around them to see every pair of eyes in the cafe staring at them. Some were looks of disgust and others were looks of amusement. Sakura felt her cheeks heat up. Hahaha. Nothing to see here. Sakura chuckled nervously, patting Naruto's arm and looking away in embarrassment. Sasuke couldn't help but smile slightly, finding the pincat's embarrassment slightly amusing. Of course, it was always fun watching his moron of a best friend get beat up as well. You two keep that up and y'all get us all thrown out, the Raven said. Sorry, Sasuke-kun, I guess I got carried away, Sakura said softly. You have nothing to apologize for, Sasuke replied seriously, not quite knowing where that came from. An awkward silence suddenly overtook the table, with Sasuke and Sakura glancing at each other momentarily and then looking away. Ever since the Raven had returned to the village, there'd been tension between the teens, though everything seemed okay on the surface. Everyone knew differently, the Raven and the Pink Cat had never actually talked about everything that had happened between them. Both simply opting to pretend it never happened. Because of that, the two tended to avoid each other when possible, neither feeling very comfortable around the other. The awkward silence was broken by the sound of someone clearing their throat. The group looked up to see none other than Sai and Yamato by their table, the latter smiling and giving a wave. "Fancy running into you all here," Yamato greeted. "Hey there, you two," Naruto replied. The team made room so that the two newcomers could sit down with them. Sai gave a smile and nodded at the group in greeting. "Hi there, Dickless, hello, Boobalicious," he said, looking straight at the Hyuga heiress. Sasuke promptly choked on his tea. Hinata let out a horrified gasp, her arms flying to her chest in an attempt to cover herself. Even though she wore modest clothing, it was obvious that she was very well endowed. She blushed as red as a tomato, not knowing what to say. "Hey. That's my girlfriend you're talking about, you asshole," Naruto yelled, incredibly pissed off. "I swear, if we weren't in this cafe right now it'd kick your ass into next week," Sakura scolded. "Calm down, ugly, it seems like you're jealous because Boobalicious is well endowed while all you have are mosquito bites," Sai replied. "Sai, that's enough. Show some respect," Yamato chimed in, trying to defuse the situation before Sakura killed somebody. Sasuke simply rolled his eyes and shook his head. He couldn't believe Sai had been his replacement in Team 7. He was obviously awkward and had no idea how to act around others. Sasuke had never liked the guy, not one bit. He refused to admit that part of the reason was jealousy. Sakura growled and attempted to reel in her temper, muttering something that sounded like "fucking pig" under her breath. Naruto turned toward his blushing girlfriend and put an arm around her, attempting to cheer her up. "It's okay, Hinata-chan, don't let Sai bother you, your boobs are perfect." Hinata gasped and her blush increased tenfold, ducking her head into Naruto's chest in embarrassment. Sasuke couldn't help but facepalm. "You goddamn idiot," he muttered. "What I say?" Naruto asked. "Anyway, I think it's impressive how you're actually participating in this auction, Kakashi-senpai," Yamato said, changing the subject. "Impressive? Why's that?" Kakashi asked. "Well, it just doesn't seem like your kind of thing, is all. I really can't picture you dating anyone," Yamato replied. "I really don't know how I got dragged into this whole thing. I figure if it's for the good of the village, I don't have a problem with it," Kakashi said. It was true, unlike his two students who did nothing but complain about the whole auction thing all of the time, Kakashi was pretty neutral to the whole thing. He had no idea how he ended up being some young eligible bachelor, but he certainly wasn't complaining. As the night came to a close, all Team 7 could think was that tomorrow would definitely be a long day. It was the day of the festival, and last-minute preparations were underway. People were putting the finishing touches on their displays and booths, and Tsunade was incredibly pleased. "Everything looks great. If this doesn't bring our village out of debt, nothing will," Tsunade said, smirking. "Ah-chan." Tsunade turned toward the voice and saw none other than a loud-mouthed blonde and the rest of his team approaching her. She couldn't help but smirk at the sour look on both Sasuke and Sakura's faces. "Why, hello there, where's Kakashi?" Tsunade asked. "You know him, he could be anywhere," Sasuke scoffed. Tsunade sighed, hoping the Jounin won't be too late. "Of course, he'll probably just show up at the last possible moment," she muttered. "Everything looks great, Ba-chan. A lot of work sure has gone into preparing for this," Naruto said. "It sure has," Tsunade replied, before turning to her pink-haired student with a smirk. Sakura eyed the Hokage, wondering what she was thinking. Surely it wasn't anything good. "Sakura, I'm glad you decided to show up. I thought you wanted no part of today's festivities," Tsunade said. The Pink Cat frowned and looked away, resisting the urge to roll her eyes. To be honest, she was ashamed of herself. She'd promised herself that she'd have no part in the festival whatsoever, but Sakura just couldn't help herself. She had to be there, so she came up with the perfect excuse. However, she'd be damned if she actually bid on anyone. There was no way in hell that was going to happen. She looked back at her master with defiance. "Please don't get any ideas, Tsunade-sama, I'm only here to help out with a medical tent, you know, in case anyone gets hurt," Sakura said. "That's very kind of you, especially since we have more than enough medical personnel on hand," Tsunade smirked. "Someone called in sick," Sakura replied, a little too quickly. The Hokage's smirk widened. "Really now? Who called in?" Just when Sakura thought she was totally busted, a familiar voice rang through the air. "Naruto, it's nice to see you again." Tsunade and Team 7 turned toward the voice to see none other than Gaara and his siblings approaching. Naruto grinned wide and ran up to the Kazekage, greeting him with a friendly hug. "Hey there, Gaara." Tamari, Kankuro, Naruto greeted with a smile. "Sup, kid," Kankuro replied. "Hello, everyone," Tamari greeted respectfully. Sakura gave a respectful bow, grateful for the siblings' impeccable timing. Sasuke simply nodded in acknowledgement. Tsunade smiled and walked up to the siblings, shaking Gaara's hand. "Welcome, everyone, I'm glad you all could make it," she said. "Of course, we won't miss it, especially not Tamari, you should have seen the look on her face once she heard about the auction," Kankuro grinned. Tamari blushed ever so slightly. "Kankuro, knock it off," she growled in warning. The Hokage chuckled at the siblings before acknowledging Gaara again. "I take it your trip here went smoothly." "Yes, it did, representatives from our village, as well as the rest of the great nations are arriving," Gaara replied. "Perfect, the rest of the cage should be arriving shortly as well, you're all more than welcome to walk around until the festivities officially begin," Tsunade smiled. Gaara gave his own smile in return, as well as a nod. "Thank you, we're eager to look around," he said, before turning to Naruto. "You and I will have to grab a bite to eat later, Naruto." The blonde grinned and nodded at the redeed. "You bet. You guys enjoy the festival." With a final smile and wave, the siblings disappeared into the growing crowd to go and explore the festival. Tsunade watched with a satisfied grin, pulling out a bottle of sake from her robe and taking a swig. Sakura's eyes widened and she frowned at her master, not amused whatsoever. "Tsunade-sama, are you really drinking sake at a time like this? What better time than at a festival?" Sasuke rolled his eyes at the woman. "How professional," he muttered sarcastically. "Pipe down, Uchiha," Tsunade barked. Just as he was opening his mouth to retort, Sasuke spotted yet another annoying blonde from the corner of his eye. The Raven took a deep breath, trying to reel in his irritation. "Great, here's another one," he growled. Before anyone could ask what the Uchiha meant, a loud feminine voice rang out, "Tsunade-samaya." The Hokage sighed and turned toward the girl, knowing where this was heading. "What is it this time, Ino?" The girl came to a halt in front of the Hokage, giving a deep bow. "Tsunade-sama, please let me lead the auction." Sakura frowned at her friend with disapproval. "Ino, this is the 5th time you've asked Tsunade-sama about that, why can't you take no for an answer?" "I can't take no for an answer because these bachelors are hot," she said before she glanced at Naruto, "except for you." "Hey. What do you know?" Naruto yelled. "Why are you mad? You have a girlfriend, dope," Sasuke scoffed. "Just because I have a girlfriend doesn't mean I can't get insulted when someone tells me I'm not attractive. I mean, come on. I'm way hotter than you, team. Are you seriously going to argue over something so petty, you idiot? Shut the hell up, both of you." Tsunade boomed. "But Bachan." "No buts." Tsunade yelled, growing very irritated. Tsunade sighed and rubbed her temples, feeling a headache coming on, not wanting to deal with Ino's nagging anymore. The Hokage decided to relent and let the young girl have her way. "Alright, fine, I'll let you assist me with today's festivities and host the auction, but no funny business, got it?" Tsunade relented. Ino let out a happy squeal and started bouncing up and down like an excited child. Without thinking, she gave the older woman a big hug, ecstatic. "Thank you, Tsunade-sama. I won't let you down, I promise. This is going to be so much fun," she gushed, letting go of Tsunade. At that moment, Shizune came up to the group, greeting them with a friendly smile. "I'm sorry to interrupt, Tsunade-sama, but the rest of the cage have arrived," she said. "Not a problem, Shizune, thank you for letting me know. Please escort them to the town center, where the auction will be taking place. I will meet you all there shortly," Tsunade replied. The brunette gave a nod and hurriedly left to meet the cage. Tsunade turned toward Team 7 and was ready to get the show on the road. "Alright Naruto, Sasuke, the auction is set to begin in about an hour. You two are coming with me, it's time for you to get ready," Tsunade instructed. Sasuke sighed, resigning himself to his fate. "Fine, let's just hurry up and get this over with already," he muttered. Naruto on the other hand wasn't very worried whatsoever. Hinata had assured him that no matter what happened, she would definitely be the highest bidder. If anything, he was excited that he'd get to show off what an amazing girlfriend he had. "Don't be so down, team, I'm sure a really nice girl will be your highest bidder, it won't be bad at all," he said. "You're so full of shit," Sasuke deadpanned. "I know, aren't I?" Naruto grinned. Sakura simply shook her head at her teammates. No matter where they were or what they were doing, Sasuke and Naruto always found something to bicker about. She loved her boys, but sometimes she just wanted to clock both of them in the face, especially now, when she was busy having an internal crisis over the damn auction. It was going to be torture. Being forced to watch Sasuke be auctioned off like some piece of meat. "No matter what happens, I will not bid on Sasuke-kun, no way, no how, I'm not bidding on anyone. If some other girl wins Sasuke-kun that's fine by me, I won't bat an eye," Sakura thought, trying to convince herself she didn't care. The pin cat sighed and put on a fake smile, looking straight at her teammates. Well, I should be heading to the medical tent now, try having fun, you too, I'm sure it won't be as bad as you think, Sasuke-kun, she said. She sounded as if she was trying to reassure Sasuke, and she was, however, she was also trying to reassure herself. Without another word, Sakura turned on her heel and took her leave. Her teammates and Tsunade simply watched her retreating back, not knowing what to say or do. She made her way to the medical tent and didn't look back. I am not wearing that. Oh, come on, Sasuke-kun. Don't be a party pooper, Ino pleaded, holding up a suit. It's a stupid idea, and you should feel stupid, Sasuke growled. If I may interject, traitor, I think that wearing matching suits is a good idea, Sai chimed in. Bite me? Why would I bite you? I didn't know you were into that sort of thing, traitor, perhaps the rumors are true after all. Will you shut the fuck up? Sasuke snapped, incredibly irritated. Sasuke team, Bachan said that Ino-chan is in charge so we need to listen to her, whether we like it or not, Naruto said. This whole thing is so troublesome, why did I agree to this, again? Shikamaru complained. Ino sighed and shook her head at the boys, you agreed to it because it's an official mission from the Hokage herself. And as part of this mission, you boys need to do what I tell you. Now put on these suits, damn it. Kiba smirked at the blonde, enjoying watching her get upset. Now, no need to get feisty, I'm not really a suit and tie kind of guy, he said. Too bad, Inuzuka, you're listening whether you like it or not. She screeched. What if I don't want to? Kiba challenged. Then it'll just have to strip you guys down myself. Before anyone had time to react, the feisty girl lunged toward the Inuzuka, trying to rip his clothes off and forcibly put the suit on him. Damn, girl, at least take me out to dinner first. Kiba smirked, not really trying to resist. Sasuke couldn't believe the sight in front of him. Was Ino really trying to strip Kiba down in front of everyone? Was she really planning on doing that to all of them? Did she have no shame? I can't believe I actually graduated with these idiots, Sasuke thought. Hey, guys, I just thought of something, where's Kakashi-sensei? Naruto asked, making Ino and Kiba stop what they were doing. Sasuke was actually grateful to hear Naruto speak for once. Why are you asking a stupid question like that? He's probably in a bush somewhere reading his trashy book, Sasuke muttered. Well, he better get here soon, the auction is starting in less than half an hour, Shikamaru said. Crap, we don't have much time at all. Come on, guys. I'm stripping you guys myself. Ino yelled. The boys sighed and eventually just gave in, agreeing to wear the suits. After taking the suits from Ino, she left the room and left them to change, a satisfied grin on her face. Sakura sat inside of the medical tent, which was located just off to the side of the stage where the auction was to take place. The pincat sighed to herself, less than thrilled with having to sit through the whole thing. Technically, she didn't have to, it was her own fault she was there, she didn't have to come, but she just couldn't help herself. I must be some sort of masochist, she thought. The nurses around her were chattering away about how excited they were to see the bachelors and how hot they must be, but Sakura just blocked them out. She took in the sights around her, watching the growing crowd gather around the stage. She saw the cage front and center and saw some familiar faces among the crowd, one of them being Hinata. Sakura smiled to herself. Happy that at least Naruto would have a nice girl to bid on him. She turned her attention to the pretty booths and decorations lining the streets of downtown and smiled wider as the scent of yummy sweets wafted through the air. Sakura just kept telling herself that if nothing else, the festival was sure to bring in a lot of money for the village and bring them out of debt. She was already shocked at how many people were in attendance. She had expected a large turnout, but this was incredible. Maybe it was a good thing she came, after all. More people meant more of a chance for injuries of some sort. It was then that Sakura decided that she would do nothing but focus her energy on staying positive and working on any patients that came her way. The pincat was broken from her thoughts by the sound of a familiar voice. Tsunade stood center stage, holding a microphone up to her lips with a smirk on her face. Hello there, everyone, thank you very much for coming to our festival. We hope that your trip here was a good one, and we hope that you have a great time during your stay. To kick off the festivities, we'll be holding an auction. Without further ado, I present your host, Ino Yamanaka, she announced. As Ino walked up on stage. The audience applauded as Ino took the microphone from the Hokage with a smile. Ino wore a sleeveless purple dress that went to her mid-thigh, with a lot of sparkles. Her hair was in an elaborate braid, and she wore light makeup and flashy jewelry. That is so Ino, Sakura thought, as she watched the events unfolding. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I'm Ino Yamanaka, and I'll be your host. Wo's ready to meet Konoha's most eligible bachelors. The crowd erupted with applause, as well as some hoots, hollers, and catcalls. They'll take that as an affirmative. Alright then, come on out, boys. One by one, Shikamaru, Kiba, Sai, Naruto, and Sasuke walked on stage, all wearing matching suits. Ino gulped when she realized that Kakashi was nowhere to be found. Just as the blonde was getting nervous, said Jounin and appeared in a puff of smoke. "Sorry I'm late, I was rescuing a cat from a tree," he said. The crowd simply stared in silence, and Ino laughed nervously. "Heh, isn't he great, ladies and gents? Just stand next to Sasuke-kun, Kakashi-sensei," Ino instructed, trying to hide her irritation at the tardy man. Sakura had to resist the urge to face palm. Turning back to the crowd, Ino continued, "Alright, folks. We'll be calling our bachelors up to center stage one by one, and everyone will have the opportunity to bid. The highest bidder will be the winner. Is everyone ready?" Once again, the crowd erupted in cheers, and Tsunade watched it all unfold with a grin on her face. This would be good. "Alright, then I declare this auction open. Let's get started." Sakura watched from the medical tent and gulped. This was it was time to begin the auction. "Alright, then I officially declare this auction open. Let's get started." The crowd immediately erupted into cheers as Ino declared that the auction was underway. Sakura watched from the medical tent, feeling anxious. This was actually happening. She was going to watch her friends and the man she loved get auctioned off to random strangers. The Pincat took a deep breath, trying to calm down. "Focus, Sakura. This is for the good of the village, it's basically just a charity event, this will bring our village out of debt, don't let your personal feelings get in the way," she thought. Ino grinned and waited for the crowd to die down before she introduced the first bachelor. "Alright, folks. Our first bachelor will sure make your head spin. Step on forward, Sai," she exclaimed. The brunette did as instructed and stepped forward to center stage, smiling his fake smile. Sai here is quite the artist. He has dark hair and has kind of pasty, but still pretty damn fine. Just don't leave him out in the sun for too long." Sakura couldn't help but roll her eyes. Didn't Ino realize she was supposed to sell the crowd on the bachelors rather than point out their flaws? He also has a sense of humor. Has always teasing our friends, all in good fun, of course. Isn't that right, Sai? "Teasing? You mean like when I call you a dumb blonde?" Sai asked, clueless. Ino twitched slightly, trying to hide her irritation. I guess. "I'm not joking when I call you that," Sai said matter-of-factly. Tsunade, who was watching from the side of the stage, barely resisted the urge to face palm. She quickly reached inside of her robe to grab her trusty bottle of sake. Taking a swig of it, Ino had better not make her regret allowing her to run the auction. They better not screw this up, this may turn into a disaster, she thought. Ino narrowed her eyes at the dark-haired man before compassing herself, hoping to keep the situation from going even more downhill. She plastered on a smile and let out an obnoxiously loud laugh, reaching up to wipe an imaginary tear from her eye. "Ha! Isn't he a riot, he just sounds so convincing. Looks like he's an artist in more ways than one." The citizens of Konoha that knew Sai personally simply sighed and rolled their eyes, knowing very well that Sai was indeed serious. He didn't have a sense of humor, he was just an asshole. Thankfully, some of the young girls from other countries seemed to buy Ino's charade and started hooting and hollering. "Alright, everyone. We'll start the bidding at 10,000 yen," Ino exclaimed. A few young girls, as well as a couple of elder ladies, immediately raised their hands. The bidding gradually increased until finally an older, not so attractive woman from Iwagakure won Sai for 50,000 yen. "Sold. Congratulations to you, Mom. You've won a date with an amazing artist," Ino exclaimed happily. Sai raised an eyebrow, incredibly unimpressed. "I'm expected to go on a date with this old far. On to the next bachelor," Ino yelled, effectively stopping Sai from ruining everything with another nasty remark. The last thing they needed was for the poor woman to regret bidding so much for him right away. Sai simply shrugged and walked off stage to join the audience. He'd have plenty of time to make all of the nasty remarks he wanted later. "Next up we have a very special bachelor coming your way. Give it up for Kiba," Ino exclaimed, gesturing the Inyazuka forward. The brunette stepped forward to center stage, flashing a devilishly handsome grin, making girls young and old swoon. "Sup, ladies." He spoke into the microphone, prompting some cat calls. "This hot tie right here comes from the Inyazuka clan. He stands at 169 centimeters tall, his astrological sign is Cancer, and he looks dreamy without a shirt on. Not that I looked or anything." Sasuke watched the events unfolding in front of him, and quite frankly, he wanted to run away. He didn't care about looking weak or stupid, there was no way in hell he wanted to be a part of this. Pretty soon, that was going to be him standing center stage, he'd have to endure his annoying colleague, rattle off facts nobody cared to know about to a bunch of strangers. Showing him off like a piece of eye candy, he glanced at Naruto, who was standing next to him, and was irritated that the blonde looked entirely unconcerned. Of course Naruto won't be worried, he had a woman he was comfortable with, a woman with a lot of money, that would be more than willing to bid on him. Sasuke almost found himself wishing he had a girlfriend of his own, someone to save him from the torture he was sure to endure. Hiba continued to wear his grin, enjoying the attention he was receiving. He struck a pose, basking in the cheers that were definitely inflating his ego. He was sure he'd be the one that fetched the highest bid, it'd be nice to show his colleagues up. Ino once again started the bidding at 10,000 yen, and this time even more women raised their hands. Kiba put his hands up in mock defense. "Please ladies, not all at once," he said with a smirk. The blonde was a little surprised at how many women wanted a date with Kiba, and quite frankly, she was a little jealous. She realized that she wanted in on the action too, who cared if she was the one hosting the auction. "I bid 75,000 yen. Ino screeched. The crowd suddenly fell silent and Tsunade rolled her eyes. The Hokage quickly made her way to center stage, whispering in Ino's ear. "What do you mean I can't bid? Ino, you're the host, of course you can't bid." The woman snapped. "But do you realize how cruel that is? Look at him. He's so hot." Ino whined, ignoring the snickers coming from the audience. "No buts. Now let's get on with it." Tsunade scolded, walking back to the other side of the stage. Ino sighed, incredibly disappointed. She looked back to the crowd, pouting slightly. "Sorry about that, folks. Anyway, now is your last chance to bid on this handsome man. Going once, going twice. 76,000 yen. Called a young woman adorning a Sunagaker headband. "Sold." Sakura continued to watch the events unfold from the medical tent. Unfortunately, no patients had come in yet, so she had nothing to take her mind off of what was coming. She couldn't help but be embarrassed on her best friend's behalf, as she was doing a wonderful job of making a fool out of herself. Luckily for Ino, she seemed to have no shame. At the same time, the Pincat was kind of happy for her friend. She didn't get a date with Kiba this time, but the Inyazuka seemed to like her. Maybe they'd end up together one day. Kiba made his way off of the stage, but not before winking at Ino. "Maybe next time," he smirked. Ino blushed ever so slightly before clearing her throat and shaking her head in an attempt to clear it. "Whoa there, girl, calm yourself, you can seduce Kiba with your feminine charm another time," she thought. Next up we have our very own Shikamaru. Shikamaru slowly made his way to center stage. He had his hands in his pockets and wore a very bored expression, clearly less than thrilled to be there. "Quit slouching, Shikamaru. Could you look any less excited?" Ino yelled. "You should stop talking to me like you're my mother and get on with it, you troublesome woman," he retorted. The blonde huffed and turned back to the crowd, not really knowing what to say about her teammate. "This oh so pleasant gentleman here is Shikamaru of the Nara clan. Well Hess really smart. Of course, you'd never know it because Hess so damn lazy. You should really learn to apply yourself, Shikamaru." Shikamaru simply yawned. "Seriously, I'm on a team with this guy. I guess Hess a great catch, Hess strong and Hess a good leader. Oh, and he has a birthmark shaped like a pineapple on his butt. Kind of like his hair. Ino." Tsunade boomed from across the stage. Shikamaru rolled his eyes and pulled a pack of cigarettes from his pocket, as well as a lighter. He lit one up and took a puff, entirely unconcerned about the looks he was receiving. "If you don't care about your potential date smelling like a chimney, well go ahead and start the bidding," Ino exclaimed. Tsunade groaned and put her head in her hands. Yep, she was definitely regretting her decision. She should have known better than to let the peppy girl host the auction. Ino truly had no filter. Nobody would ever bid on Shikamaru now. Tsunade could just see the potential profit slipping away. The thought gave her a feeling of dread and caused her to take another swig of her sake. Shizune noticed the woman's distress and placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "It's going to be okay, Tsunade-sama," the brunette said softly. "Don't you try and make me feel better," the woman replied, clearly irritated. To everyone's surprise, bidding for Shikamaru quickly took off. Temari quickly got into a bidding war with a wealthy middle-aged woman from Konoha. "I bid 80,000 yen," the woman exclaimed. Temari growled and shook her head. "No way is some prissy rich bitch winning a date with my man, I mean, Shikamaru," she hissed. Kankuro looked at her and laughed. "Is someone jealous? Does our Temari have a crush?" "Shut up, Kankuro. I wouldn't do anything rash if I were you." 85,000 yen. Temari boomed, effectively cutting Gaara off. Iridied sighed at his older sister, but found the situation amusing. It was funny to watch her get all worked up over a guy. Him and Kankuro had known of Temur's feelings for the lazy genius for a while now. Gaara had first noticed back when Sasuke had first left the village, and Shikamaru had led the mission to retrieve him, upon seeing how worried his sister had been about the boy. Gaara knew that there was something special about Shikamaru. There had to be for his sister to get so worked up over him. For that, he was thankful. He was glad that his sister had found someone to love in that way, even if she'd never admit just how deep her feelings went. The bidding war only intensified as both Temari and the other woman got more and more worked up. 160,000 yen. Try and outbid me and I'll blow your ass into next week. Temari threatened. That's what she said, Kankuro snickered. The wealthy woman's eyes went wide and she gulped, fearing for her safety, though she could afford to keep going, she gave up with a huff. Going once going twice sold for 160,000 yen. Ino exclaimed. Shikamaru couldn't help but let a small smirk grace his features, maybe not all women were troublesome. Once the initial high of winning the auction wore off, Temari gasped and put her head in her hands. Oh shit, she cursed. What are you shitting about? You just won a date with your chain-smoking man, Kankuro said, amused. Temari lifted her head and took a deep breath, her eyes closed, she felt a headache coming on, she finally opened her eyes and turned to her brothers. I don't have that much money on me right now, she muttered. I warned you not to do anything rash, Gar replied. That's what you get for not paying attention to how much you are spending, don't look at me, I'm not paying for your date, Kankuro said, his arms crossed. The blonde looked at her youngest brother, her eyes pleading. The Redeed let out a sigh and nodded, don't worry, I'll help you out, he said. Temari smiled and gave him a hug, thank you, I really appreciate it, you know I'll pay you back. Shikamaru stepped off of the stage, and Ino proceeded to call Kakashi forward, because the jounin was late as usual, he hadn't been forced to change into a suit, instead, he stood in his usual shinobi uniform with his hands in his pockets, just as Ino was about to begin talking about him, he pulled out his book, Sakura proceeded to facepalm. And Naruto was about to yell at the man until Sasuke silenced him with an elbow to the ribs. Ino rolled her eyes, but decided to let it slide, she knew Kakashi well enough to know he wouldn't put that trashy book away, no matter who told him to, she turned to regard the audience with a smile. This eligible bachelor is none other than Kakashi Haddock, also known as Kakashi of the Sharingan, Hess clearly cool and mysterious, since he wears that mask all of the time. The copy ninja simply gave a small wave, never taking his nose out of his book. Hess also a very avid reader, and will always be able to protect you if a bad guy shows up on your date. That is, if Kakashi even shows up for your date anyway, well start bidding at 10,000 yen. Ino exclaimed. Sakura couldn't help but sigh and shake her head, she loved Ino, but she could be less than bright, she should be highlighting everyone's good points. Thankfully, the auction seemed to be going well despite Ino's less than stellar auctioneer skills. I guess it's a good thing their looks make up for what their personalities lack, she thought. Once again, women young and old eagerly competed for the chance to date the famous copy ninja, even the Mizukage, Mei Terumi, got involved, it was just too hard to resist a handsome, mysterious man such as Kakashi. What no one seemed to expect, however, was for Shizune to get in on the action. 160,000 yen. She called from the side of the stage. Tsunade, Sakura, and Ino's eyes went wide, and they all looked at Shizune in shock, where had that come from? Shizune was interested in Kakashi. She was interested enough to bid against the Mizukage herself. Even Kakashi seemed to be surprised, as he had finally put his book down and glanced toward the brunette. Well, who would have thought Shizune would be interested in a boring man such as myself, he thought. Mei's eyes narrowed at the other woman from where she was standing, the copy ninja was a very powerful man, and from what she could tell, handsome, she was willing to bet that he was just as attractive without the mask on, she wanted to win a date with him, so that she could test her theory, and most certainly steal a kiss or two as well. Among other things, she thought with a smirk. If the Hokage's assistant wanted Kakashi so badly, Mei was going to make her work for it, she'd drive the price up, and if Shizune still bid after that, she'd let her have him. 200,000 yen. She barked. Shizune gasped softly and looked down, not sure if she should just give up or not. Going once going twice. Shizune bids 201,000 yen. Tsunade yelled. Ino and Shizune both gasped and looked at Tsunade in shock, wait, how the hell is that fair? You won't let me bid on Kiba, yet you bid on Shizune's behalf, Ino screeched. It's fair because I'm the Hokage and I said so. Tsunade retorted. The brunette shook her head at her master, Tsunade-sama, I don't have that kind of money, she said softly. The older woman looked at her assistant and winked, well, I guess I'll just have to work you harder then, she said with a smirk. Yes, that'll be fine, Tsunade-sama. Thank you. Shizune replied with a bow. Well, if nobody else wants to bid, sold. Congratulations, you've won a date with Kakashi of the Sharingan for 201,000 yen. Ino declared, still peeved at the situation. As soon as Kakashi walked off stage, his nose now back in his book, a certain blonde-haired knucklehead bounced up to center stage. My turn. He yelled, grabbing the microphone. Hi there, everyone. Unfortunately for you all, none of you are going to win a date with me. You know why? Because nobody can outbid my girlfriend. He rambled. Ino growled and walked over to the loudmouth, ripping the microphone from his hands and proceeding to hit him over the head with it. The action caused very loud feedback from the microphone, further irritating Ino and hurting the ears of everyone in attendance. Damn it, Naruto. See what you did? She bellowed. Naruto rubbed his head and whined, now irritated as well, what I did. You're the one that hit me with the microphone. The girl rolled her eyes and shoved his microphone back at him, shut up, just stand there and look pretty, she muttered, before turning to regard the audience once again. Sorry about that, folks. Here we have Naruto Uzumaki, the hero of Konoha. He has blonde hair, piercing blue eyes, and if you give him ramen, he'll love you forever. His hobby is eating ramen. His proudest accomplishment is winning a ramen eating contest, really, Naruto? She deadpanned. The blonde simply shrugged, grinning, I just really love ramen. Clearly, anyway, bidding will begin at the usual 10,000 yen. Any takers? The crowd immediately erupted with cheers and hollers. It seemed that Naruto had become quite famous, not that anyone was surprised, his actions during the war had been nothing short of astounding, and he had played a huge part in saving the world from utter destruction. Of course the ladies would open their wallets for a chance to date him. 200,000 yen. You can take my house. You can take my husband. Naruto grinned to himself, thoroughly enjoying the attention he was receiving. It'll definitely have more bidders than Sasuke team, ha. He thought. Hinata stood with her team, looking around with a blush, she gulped, knowing that she would have to speak up and bid for Naruto. She found the whole thing embarrassing, but there was no way she would let someone else win the auction, she refused to let him down. Naruto-kun certainly is popular, she said softly. Hiba, who had come to join her after his turn was up, put a hand on her shoulder, that he is, you're not going to let a bunch of rich old ladies show you up, are you? Come on, show them wo's boss. He said with a smile. Hinata gulped and decided that it was now or never. I bid 250,000 yen. That's my girl. Go, Hinata-chan. Naruto cheered from center stage, blowing her a kiss. The action made the shy girl blush even harder. It looked as if the auction was won, until a wealthy older woman from Kumagakure spoke up, 260,000 yen. Hinata gasped softly and twiddled her thumbs nervously. Was this really going to come down to a bidding war? She took a deep breath and prepared herself. She won't lose, 270,000 yen. The older woman growled and then smirked wickedly to herself. There was no way she'd be shown up by some shy little girl. She'd end this quickly, 300,000 yen. Give up, sweetie. She shouted. The woman's words struck a nerve, give up. Those words weren't in Hinata's vocabulary, not anymore, she would not be made a fool of, and she would not let anyone touch the man she loved. With newfound determination, the Hyuga called out what she hoped would be the final bid, I refuse to give up. I bid 500,000 yen. She yelled confidently. The woman from Kumagakure let out an offended gasp, how dare that child embarrass her so. She rolled her eyes and shook her head, you can have him, I refuse to pay that much, Hess not that cute anyway, she said with a huff. Going once, going twice, sold. Naruto's grin grew tenfold and he clapped his hands in excitement, see? I just knew Hinata-chan would outbid everyone. Way to go. He yelled, running off stage to give his girlfriend a big hug. Oh, aren't they cute? Ino teased with a smile, she was genuinely happy for those two, they made a cute couple, though she couldn't imagine how Hinata could possibly put up with a knucklehead. A certain Pincat gulped from her seat in the medical tent, this was it was Sasuke's turn, she felt a wave of anxiety overtake her, and she looked away, putting her head in her hands, why hadn't any patients come through yet? She needed a distraction, damn it. The fact that the nurses sitting beside her kept going on and on about how attractive the Raven was didn't help whatsoever. Alright, folks. Last but not least, we have Sasuke-chan. Ino exclaimed. The Raven took a deep breath, resigning himself to his fate, and stepped forward to center stage. He placed his hands in his pockets and tried zoning out, less than thrilled with his predicament. He wanted nothing more than for this to be a dream, or a prank, there was no way he wanted to be forced to put up with a weak, spoiled girl. The whole thing was utterly humiliating. Boots and catcalls rang out among the crowd, and he tried blocking them out to no avail. Well, I suppose it's better than being booed, I'm surprised I haven't had anything thrown at me yet after what I did, he mused with a sigh. This handsome man is Sasuke-chan, he has raven hair, dark eyes, and is the sexy bad boy type, who won't want to date with him. Ino gushed. Traitor. Yelled a middle-aged man with a beard. Called it, the Uchiha thought sarcastically. The woman standing next to the man, presumably his wife, smacked him on the arm, be quiet. She scolded. Why should I? He became a missing nin, and now we just let him back in our village like it never happened, what does that say to other nations? Our leader is a pushover. He screeched. Tsunade growled at the man's words and left her spot at the side of the stage to storm over to the man, grabbing him by the collar, listen up and listen well, Sasuke-chan more than made up for his transgressions, if it weren't for his contributions during the war, this village, as well as your family, could be destroyed right now, show some damn respect. Or I will show you just how much of a pushover I am, she hissed. The man's eyes were wide with fright and he simply nodded dumbly at the woman. His wife couldn't help but snicker beside him, believing he got what he deserved. Truth be told, he was probably jealous of the Uchiha. Tsunade let go of the man's collar, took her place beside her assistant and took another swig of sake. Sakura couldn't help but smile, grateful to her master for not allowing Sasuke to be bad-mouthed in front of everyone. She allowed her eyes to travel to the raven, who didn't seem to care about what had just happened. The fact that he didn't care about anyone's opinion seemed to be both a blessing and a curse. Her colleagues continued to rattle on about how jealous they'd be of whoever won a date with the raven, and the pink cat just wanted to get away from it. Sasuke is definitely the most attractive one up there, I'd love to show him a good time. I know, right? I've always loved the bad boy type. Sakura finally couldn't take it anymore. She bolted up and walked straight out of the medical tent, desperately needing to get away from their conversation. Damn it all she wanted was to be able to get over him. No matter what she did, it never worked. Her latest tactic had been trying to avoid him for the most part, but her feelings still won't go away. Why did she have to love him so? She felt her chest constrict and she put a hand to her heart. That raven-haired bastard had dug his way into her heart long ago and she knew that he would have a place there forever. Tsunade motioned for Ino to continue and the younger woman cleared her throat, determined to play off what had just happened. Looks like someone woke up on the wrong side of the bed this morning. Or maybe he just didn't have his coffee. Alright folks, this is our last bachelor, so let's make this count. We'll begin bidding at 10,000 yen. 50,000 yen. 100,000 yen. You call that a bid? 200,000 yen. Bidding for the Uchiha was intense and nobody was sure how it would go. So many people seemed determined to win a date with a handsome young man, but eventually as the price jumped higher and higher, only the wealthiest could afford to keep bidding. It eventually looked as if a young girl around Sakura's age would win it all. She stood beside her father. The wealthy-looking man wearing only the finest robes. My 2 cent bid 700,000 yen. She bellowed. The girl's father immediately glared at her, narrowing his eyes. I never agreed to that, Satsuna, he scolded. But 2 san. He's so handsome and I told you I would stop at nothing to win a date with him. She whined. Whose money do you think you're spending here? I never agreed to let you spend that much. Well, I already called our bid so it's too late. It's not like any of these losers can afford to outbid us anyway. She pouted. Sasuke wanted to scream, his worst nightmare was about to come true, an annoying, spoiled, good-for-nothing fangirl was going to be his highest bidder, he'd be forced to take her on a date and listen to her talk about things he couldn't care less about and he'd have to worry about her pawing at him all of the time. He almost wished someone would come by and knock him out. Just so he didn't have to deal with the torture. Sakura was in the same predicament. She couldn't imagine how Sasuke must feel, as she knew that people like that spoiled brat were near the top of his shit list. It was cruel how some girl who didn't care about anything but the raven's looks would get to spend time with him, and by using her father's money at that, her eyes once again fell on Sasuke, and the look on his face broke her heart. He looked as if he wanted to disappear, her heart was beating a million miles a minute. Going once. Sakura couldn't take it anymore. Going twice. Sakura spoke before she could stop herself. I bid 1 million yen. She yelled. Gasp sounded throughout the crowd and a grin came across both Tsunade and Ino's faces. Sasuke simply stood there in shock, unable to believe the words that had just come out of her mouth. Did Sakura even realize what she was doing? Sold for 1 million yen. Way to go, forehead. Get some. Ino cheered. The pink cat ignored her best friend's utterly unprofessional comment, staring Sasuke straight in the eyes. She imagined that she looked just as shocked as he did. Where had that even come from? Suddenly, Sakura realized just how much she had bid for the Uchiha. What had she done? Sakura put her head in her hands and shook her head, unable to comprehend how she could have acted so impulsively. She sat under a cherry blossom tree, decorated with pretty lanterns. Upon the end of the auction, the pink cat had quickly retreated to a less crowded part of the festival. There was no way she could have stayed there another minute, she just needed to sit and think. Stupid, stupid, stupid. Why did I bid so much? Why did I bid at all? Have I no pride? She thought, mentally beating herself up. As much as Sakura tried to erase the day's events from her mind, she knew it was impossible. Her empty bank account would be the only reminder she needed. How many missions would she have to take? How many hospital shifts would she have to work? The girl ran a hand through her cotton candy hair, trying to calm her nerves and failing miserably. I'm going to spend months, if not years paying that bid off. I must have appeared so desperate, Sasuke-kun must think him pathetic, she thought. Sakura. There you are. Sakura looked up to find her best friend coming her way, a concerned look on her face. The pink cat really didn't feel like talking to anyone at the moment, but she knew there was no escape. What is it, Ino? The blonde-haired girl stopped in front of Sakura, crossing her arms. You're missing the festival. Don't you want to play some games and see the sights? Not really, I'm having a bit of an internal crisis here, if you couldn't tell, I'm going to be in so much debt. Sakura exclaimed. Ino completely brushed her off, entirely unconcerned, she took a seat next to the Pinkette, putting a comforting arm around her. Oh, come on. You did so well. You got yourself a great catch. I should have been allowed to bid too, it's so unfair. Sakura simply glared at the girl. The blonde grinned sheepishly, letting out a nervous chuckle. Heh, sorry, anyway, I wouldn't worry about it if I were you, we should try getting Sasuke-kun to pay for himself. The medic raised a questioning eyebrow, why do you say that? You saw how miserable he looked up there, he didn't want that snoo girl or whatever her name was to win any more than you did, you totally got him off the hook, plus, you're a great catch yourself. Any guy would be lucky to date you. Sakura blushed and gave a small smile, thanks, Ino, I'm just terrified of facing Sasuke-kun, I'm not ready, I have no idea what he'll say or do when I see him, she replied. Just then, Hinata and Tenten walked up, Tenten clapped her hands excitedly, a big grin on her face, congratulations, Sakura-chan. I'm so happy for you, she exclaimed. Hinata nodded in agreement, smiling sweetly, yes, congratulations, Sakura-chan, I know how much you like Sasuke-kun, she said softly. The Pinkette's blush only intensified, but before she could retort, Naruto and Sasuke decided to pop up, she sighed, looking away. Why did everyone have to decide to show up when all I want is to be alone right now? She thought, annoyed. Hinata-chan. Naruto yelled excitedly, running up to hug his girlfriend, I know I already said this, but I knew you wouldn't let some old ladies outbid you. She smiled and hugged him back, a blush adorning her cheeks, I promised you I wouldn't let you down, Naruto-kun, she said softly. I knew you wouldn't break your promise, you're the world's best girlfriend. He exclaimed, giving her a full kiss on the lips. The shy girl responded to the kiss briefly before pulling away, her face as red as a tomato, to say she was embarrassed was an understatement, but she couldn't deny that she secretly loved it. I'm sorry, do you two want us to leave so you can make out? Tenten said with a smirk. Naruto simply glared at the brunette and stick his tongue out immaturely. Sasuke ignored his colleague's banter, instead opting to discreetly make his way closer to Sakura, based on the way she couldn't wait to get away from the auction, he could tell she was avoiding him, the fact that she had bid so much money on him, shocked him to say the least, had known of her past feelings for him, but he believed that she had gotten over him long ago, after all. How could she still love a traitor like him? She had been avoiding him even before the auction, why would she bid so much on him just to run away from him? He needed answers. Sakura noticed Sasuke slowly sliding over to her from the corner of her eye, and she wanted to make a run for it, she looked over at Ino, her eyes pleading for help, the blonde was confused for a moment, before she remembered their earlier conversation, she knew that Sakura wasn't ready to face Sasuke yet, so she decided to help the Pinkette escape. The group of students were walking by, seemingly to admire the cherry blossom trees and to get away from the hustle and bustle of the festival. Ino stepped in front of Sakura, blocking her from view, and the Pinkette disappeared into the crowd. Just as she thought she had made a slick getaway, Naruto decided to open his big mouth. Hey, where did Sakura-chan go? He screeched. The Pinkette couldn't contain her growl, she loved Naruto, but he was truly an idiot sometimes, she could only hope that Sasuke wouldn't spot her. It wasn't long before her hopes were dashed, Sasuke quickly spotted a mop of pink among the students. Sakura, wait. He yelled, making his way towards her. Shit, damn my pink hair. Sakura thought, deciding to make a run for it. What the hell? Sakura, wait up. Sasuke yelled again, giving chase. All he wanted was to talk to her, why was she running away from him again? The Pinkette focused most of her chakra to her legs, trying to outrun him. Sasuke was very fast, and she knew it wouldn't be long before he caught up to her, the only way to get away would be to lose him. Thankfully, there were thousands of people attending the festival, it won't be very hard to get away. Sasuke did a good job of keeping up for a while, but he eventually lost her in the sea of people. Was she called in to treat a patient or something? She can't possibly be that afraid of facing me, he thought, utterly annoyed at this point. The Raven roamed the festival alone, not wanting to deal with Naruto and his obnoxious remarks, he was trying to clear his thoughts, but wasn't doing a very good job, he needed to know why Sakura bid so much on him, and then proceeded to avoid him like the plague, feeling a headache coming on, he closed his eyes and massaged his temples, willing himself to calm down, suddenly. He heard giggles and sighs coming from behind him and rolled his eyes, trying to resist the urge to lash out. 3 obnoxious girls that clearly had nothing better to do had been stalking him for the better part of the day, he was in no mood for fangirls and their bullshit at the moment, with that thought in mind, he turned around to face the giggling girls. I'm going to say this once, I have no interest in any of you, stop following me or there will be hell to pay, he threatened. The red-haired girl gave him puppy eyes and pouted, but, Sasuke-kun, you have 3 beautiful girls here that adore you. Another girl with short purple hair nodded in agreement, that's right. Don't you want to come hang out with us? The last girl, this one with blonde hair and an outfit that left little to the imagination, waltzed right up to Sasuke. She touched his arm and looked up at him with seductive eyes, and he glared at her, quickly losing his patience. Sasuke don't you want us to show you a good time? She asked, having the audacity to move her hand to his chest. Get the hell off of me, now. He yelled, his Sharingan activated. The girl quickly jumped back in alarm, and the three girls left without being told twice. At least they were smart enough to know that he wasn't screwing around. The Uchiha sighed and deactivated his Sharingan. Finding a bench and sitting down, he closed his eyes and shook his head, irritated beyond belief. This whole festival was truly nothing but one big headache. The next morning, the bachelors and the winners were summoned to Tsunade's office. Everyone was to plan their dates with the help of Tsunade herself, as well as Ino and Shizune. Sakura sighed and walked out of the hospital, making her way to the Hokage Tower. She had taken an early shift, even though she wasn't scheduled to. Sleep had completely eluded her the night before. There was too much on her mind. On top of that, she figured that she'd need to take all of the shifts she could get if she was to pay off her bid. The Pincat paid little attention to her surroundings as she walked through the village square. She was working on autopilot at this point, too lost in her thoughts. What would she say to Sasuke when she saw him? She called to avoid him this time. He surely hated her, or at least viewed her as pathetic and desperate. Why wouldn't he? Nobody else placed a bid even close to what she did, not even Hinata, the heir to one of the most powerful clans in the village, bid that much for Naruto. What had she been thinking? She hadn't been thinking, that's what. She'd lost her head, let her feelings get in the way. Had she no shame or willpower whatsoever? Hadn't she promised herself that she wouldn't bid on Sasuke no matter what? So much for that, I'm never going to live this down, she thought, walking into the Hokage Tower. Sakura made her way down the hallway, heading toward the waiting area outside of Tsunade's office. She had her head down and was still mentally beating herself up. She could just picture the stares, the judgmental eyes, the snickers. The thought made her sick to her stomach. Sakura-chan, watch out. The medic looked up just in time to greet the doorframe before she walked face first into it. A loud bang sounded throughout the room, making everyone wince. The Pincat groaned and put her face in her hands. Aw, shit. Sakura cursed. Hinata gasped, and Naruto ran over to his teammate. Are you alright, Sakura-chan? I'm sorry, I tried to warn you. He exclaimed. Sakura simply nodded, rubbing her nose. I'm fine, I don't think anything is broken, I won't even have a bruise, just caught me by surprise, is all she said, looking away in embarrassment. Naruto brought her into the waiting area and sat her down before taking his seat next to Hinata. Sasuke eyed his pink-haired teammate curiously, but she avoided eye contact at all costs. The Uchiha sighed and looked away, deciding to let it go for now. Everyone was here to plan their dates. She'd have to speak to him eventually. The group sat in silence, waiting for their turn. Sigh, of course. Cold resist making a snide remark. Gosh, ugly, are you sure you're okay? You're sitting there with such a sour look on your face, you look like a zombie with those bags under your eyes, he said. Shut your fucking face, Sakura growled. Sai cocked his head to the side, unaware of the danger of his situation. If he were a decent human being, he'd keep his mouth shut. However, Sai was not a decent human being. Wow, you really are testy today, are you on your time of the mon? He didn't have a chance to finish his question. Sakura was over to him in a flash and proceeded to knock him unconscious. Sasuke cold resist smirking. He never liked Sai whatsoever, and he refused to admit that it was partly due to jealousy. The artist was annoying as hell, but it was amusing to watch his mouth get him into trouble. Watching Sakura knock him unconscious was oddly satisfying. He licked his suddenly dry lips and cleared his throat awkwardly, looking away. Okay, it wasn't that impressive. Do I seriously dislike Sai that much? He mused. He refused to acknowledge that watching Sakura use her strength like that satisfied him in more ways than one. Yo, Sakura, not for nothing, I mean, he totally deserved it and all, but I think you just petrified Sadate, Kiba spoke, amused. Sakura took a deep breath and took in Kiba's words. Before her eyes widened in alarm, she looked over at Sadate, an older woman from Iwagakure, and felt shame wash over her. The medic quickly gave a deep bow. I am so sorry, I apologize, mom. I shouldn't have lost my temper like that. What the hell are you apologizing for, girly? I'm glad you knocked his ass out. The woman exclaimed. Sakura stood upright in surprise, fighting the urge to smile. Really? Yeah, really. Never have I met such a rude and crude little shit. Had been making comments about my age ever since I won him. As soon as our turn came up, I was going to pay your Hokage to take him back. Everyone in the room sweat dropped, but understood where the woman was coming from. The people that knew Sai personally knew that he was far from pleasant. He definitely took some getting used to, though if you could get past the fake smiles and the crude comments, he wasn't all bad. Just then, Shizune came out of Tsunede's office and greeted the group with a smile, that is, before she noticed Sai laying on the ground, out cold. "Oh my gosh, what happened?" Shizune shrieked. Sakura-chan lost her temper, but it was because Sai was being a dumbass, as usual. Naruto exclaimed. "DCH, Yaour want to talk, dope," Sasuke muttered. "What was that, team?" Naruto yelled. "What the hell is taking so long?" Everyone turned to see a very impatient-looking Tsunade holding her bottle of sake. Everyone once again sweat dropped. "Leave it to the Hokage to start drinking before noon," Shizune regarded her with a bow. "I'm sorry, Tsunade-sama, it's just well you might want to look for yourself," Shizune said softly, pointing to Sai sprawled on the ground. The Hokage snickered and glanced at Sakura, Sai being a prick again. The medic simply nodded. Leave him there, he'll come to eventually," Tsunade said, entirely unconcerned. Shizune gasped, not believing what she was hearing, "But Tsunade-sama. We can't just leave him there like that. Should we make sure he's alright?" The blonde rolled her eyes, wanting to get the show on the road already. "Sakura, do you believe that you punched him hard enough to cause great bodily injury?" Sakura shook her head at her master. "No, I don't. Sai may be a lot of things, but I won't punch him hard enough to seriously injure him," she said. "That's good enough for me. Where's Kakashi?" "I don't see him," Tsunade asked. Sasuke looked at the Hokage incredulously. "Are you seriously asking that question? I'm sure he's at home reading his trashy novels, or as he puts it, getting lost on the path of life." Tsunade rolled her eyes and shook her head. "You're probably right, Shizune, go summon Kakashi yourself," she said with a smirk. "But, Tsunade-sama." "No buts. This is a direct order, go get him," Tsunade said, the smirk never leaving her face. The brunette blushed and nodded, giving a slight bow before leaving the room. Tsunade turned to regard everyone remaining in the room. "Alright, everyone is here to plan their dates. We'll do this in the same order in which we conducted the auction. Someone wake Sai up so we can get this show on the road," the Hokage instructed. A devious smirk came across Sakura's face, and she knelt down next to Sai. "That can be arranged," the Pinket smirked, cracking her knuckles. Everyone winced as a loud smack sounded throughout the room. It was going to be a long day. Sasuke and Sakura sat in the waiting area in an awkward silence. Almost everyone else had finished planning their dates, with the exception of Kakashi and Shizune who were who knows where. The two shinobi were simply waiting on Naruto and Hinata to finish up. The Pinket sat on the opposite side of the room as Sasuke, keeping her head down and pretending to read a book. In reality, the words on the page never registered in her mind, she was just too nervous about what was to come. Sasuke sat across the room, deep in thought. Sakura hadn't even looked at him or acknowledged him in any way since they'd been waiting. To say that he was confused was an understatement. She'd bid so much for a date with him, yet she was completely ignoring him. What in the world was with her? Just as Sasuke was about to open his mouth to demand some answers, the door to Tsunade's office opened. Out walked Naruto and Hinata hand in hand. Sakura looked up from her book and smiled at the two, finding them to be adorable. The two lovebirds walked up to the Raven and the Pinket, informing them that Tsunade was ready to see them. Sakura gulped and put her book down with shaky hands. She was not looking forward to her impending doom. How was she supposed to explain to Sasuke that she'd totally lost her head? How were they going to go on a date when he so clearly had no interest in her? Maybe she'd be able to get out of it somehow. She'd find a way to spare Sasuke from the torture of spending a day with her. After saying goodbye to their friends, Sasuke and Sakura slowly made their way into the Hokage's office. The blonde-haired woman acknowledged them with a nod. "Feel free to take a seat, you two," she said. The two shinobi took a seat in front of the Hokage, waiting to hear what she had to say. However, before Tsunade even had a chance to say anything, Sakura broke the silence. "Tsunade-sama, I really don't need this date," she said. The Hokage and the Raven looked at her in surprise. The former proceeded to narrow her eyes at her student. "Sakura, once your bid has been placed, you're not allowed to withdraw it. If you can't afford it, maybe you should have thought before. It's not about the money. It'll still pay off my bid," Sakura cut her off. This confused the blonde even more. She knew how much her student adored the Uchiha brat. Why would she pass up the opportunity to go on a date with him? "I don't understand, explain yourself," she barked. Sasuke turned in his chair to get a better look at Sakura, a questioning eyebrow raised. "I'm interested to hear this as well," he said. Sakura looked down at her lap and twiddled her thumbs, feeling a wave of anxiety wash over her. She was about to make an even bigger fool out of herself in front of the man she loved. How the hell was she going to explain herself? Why couldn't I have just stuck to my guns and stayed out of it? Then I wouldn't be in for such an embarrassment, she thought. The Pinket screwed her eyes shut and gulped, deciding to get the whole thing over with as quickly as possible. I know that Sasuke-kun would rather not date me, but I saw the look on his face when that one spoiled girl was about to win a date with him. I got jealous, and I rashly placed my bid. I know that Hess not interested in me or wants anything to do with me whatsoever, but I'm just glad I got him off the hook. Tsunade-sama, you should let Sasuke-kun go on a date with someone Hess actually interested in. Like I said, I'll still pay off my bid, so don't worry. She exclaimed quickly, talking about the Uchiha like he wasn't even there. Sasuke and Tsunade stared at the Pinket, stunned. Sasuke didn't even know what to say. How could Sakura think that he didn't want anything to do with her? She was his teammate, she was more than just a teammate, actually, he considered her a true friend, and he had other feelings regarding her that he couldn't quite put his finger on. He refused to acknowledge that he knew damn well what those feelings were. Sakura, you've got it all wrong. No, Sasuke-kun, it's alright, you don't have to lie and make me feel better. Now that we've got that out of the way, I'm going to take my leave, Sakura said, standing up. Sakura, you are not to leave this office. Tsunade ordered. The Pinket ignored her master, turning on her heel and taking a step toward the door. Sasuke bolted out of his seat, and Sakura gasped as she felt a hand grab her wrist gently but firmly. "On go," he said calmly. Sakura felt her pulse begin to race, and she wanted to listen to him, however, she also felt the growing need to run away. They'd never had a proper conversation regarding their past issues. She still loved him dearly, but was still trying to get over him. She needed to avoid him, she needed to get away from him. "You never listened to me when I asked you not to go," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. She knew that she shouldn't have said it, but she had to. There was no way she'd be able to deal with rejection again, so she decided to push him away first. She expected him to get angry and tell her to get out of his sight, so she was surprised when he did the opposite. Sasuke's eyes widened in surprise at her words. To be honest, he was a little hurt, however, he knew he had no room to judge her after all had put her through. He quickly regained his composure and gave a sigh. "That may be true, and I know you're just as stubborn as I am, but I'm asking you as your teammate and your friend to sit back down, will you do that?" He asked calmly, looking her straight in the eye. The Pinket hesitated for a moment but ended up nodding and quietly heading back to her seat, with the Raven following. Tsunade simply eyed the two shinobi knowingly. To tell the truth, she was rather impressed with Sasuke. Maybe the brat would be good for her student after all. Not only was she impressed with the Uchiha, she was also grateful to him. She truly wanted Sasuke and Sakura together. Mainly for her student's sake, however, she also had her own reasons. "I'm glad you were able to keep her here, Uchiha. I've got a lot of money riding on this working out," Tsunade said matter-of-factly. Sasuke and Sakura simply stared at the Hokage blankly. "You placed bets on us going on a date," Sakura screeched. "Of course I did. Who do you think you're dealing with?" Tsunade retorted. Sasuke rolled his eyes and crossed his arms. "Can't say I'm surprised. I mean, we are dealing with a woman woes usually buzz before noon," he muttered. The blonde shot him a glare. "Don't forget who pardoned your ass, Uchiha, show some respect," she snapped. "Fine, I apologize," he growled. "Damn right you apologize. Anyway, back to what we're here for. We'll have you two go out on your date sometime this week," the blonde said. The Pinket shook her head at her master. "This week won't work, I'm working every single day this week," she said. Tsunade raised an eyebrow at her student. "Every day? I always make sure you have at least one day off, usually two. How are you working every day?" "I picked up 2 shifts for this weekend. I don't know if you realized, but I spent quite a lot of money during the auction. I need all of the shifts I can get," Sakura replied. "Well, whose fault was that? You're not getting out of this, Sakura. I'll be moving your schedule around so you don't work this weekend," Tsunade shot back. "But Tsunade-sama." "No buts," she barked before turning to Sasuke. The Uchiha looked back and forth between the Hokage and Sakura, internally sighing. Those two definitely had nasty tempers, and he hated being in the middle of it. He finally faced Tsunade, waiting for her to speak. "Alright, Uchiha, now that it's been established that your date will be this weekend, we need to figure out a location. Did you have any place in mind?" Sasuke thought for a moment before nodding. "I actually do have a place in mind. It's a cafe over where the Uchiha compound was," he replied. The Hokage nodded at the Raven in approval. "That works, you two can work out details amongst yourselves. You're dismissed," she said, reaching for some paperwork. The two shinobi stood up and gave a slight bow before exiting Tsunade's office. Sakura seemed to be in a hurry to leave, but Sasuke still wanted answers. He still couldn't get over the fact that she seemed to believe he wanted nothing to do with her, had been trying to be more kind since had returned to the village. Was he doing a terrible job? Sakura had placed her bid out of a combination of jealousy and pity. Did that mean she still had feelings for him? Why did he even care? All of the questions bothered Sasuke greatly, and there was no way he'd let her avoid him any longer. "Sakura, wait up," he called. The pin cat stopped in her tracks and sighed, not in the mood to talk to anyone at the moment. She was still trying to reel in her humiliation. She didn't bother turning around, instead continuing toward the exit. "I need to get back to the hospital, Sasu-kun, we'll talk later," she responded. Sakura was out the door before Sasu could get another word in. He knew that he could have caught up to her if he really wanted to, however, he decided to leave it. "After all, she can't avoid me forever." Sakura walked through the village square, heading toward the hospital. She was relieved when she realized that Sasuke hadn't followed her. She was grateful that he was giving her space for now. Unfortunately, she knew that he won't let it slide forever. Once he was determined to do something, he did it. It was only a matter of time before he cornered her. The thought made the Pinket sigh. Then she looked up to admire the cherry blossom trees scattered about. She smiled to herself, finding comfort in the scenery and the fact that it was such a lovely day outside. She almost wished she could skip going to the hospital and go to a park instead. Suddenly, 3 girls stepped in front of Sakura, effectively blocking her path and making her stop in her tracks. She recognized one of the girls as the one that had been hell-bent on spending her father's money to win the auction. Setsuna, was it? Upon closer inspection, she recognized the 2 other girls as her former bullies. The Pincat clenched her fists, trying to block out the memories that were trying to come to the surface. "Gosh, why are you so ugly? Your forehead is huge. You could paint a bull's eye on it and never miss. Why don't you fight back when we push you around, huh? You make this too easy." She resisted the urge to growl as she recalled her painful childhood memories. Being bullied as a child had absolutely destroyed all self-confidence Shed had. Thankfully, she was no longer that weak child. Shed grown up and become a strong kunoichi. Well, they'd never even graduated the academy. Knowing that she was above them, Sakura decided to ignore the girls and continue to walk forward, intending to brush past them. "Hey, Sakura-chan, don't be like that, aren't you going to say hi to your old classmates?" asked the girl with blonde hair. Sakura took a deep breath, her lips set in a thin line. They were going to taunt her. She decided to kill them with kindness and grace them with a pretty smile. "Ah, yes, hello, I wish I could stay and catch up, but I was supposed to be back at the hospital a while ago," she said. "Aw, that's too bad, we really wanted to reminisce about old times, you know, like how you always liked Sasu-kun, still no luck in your love life, huh?" "Not that anyone blames him," a brunette girl said cruelly. The medic narrowed her eyes at the 3 girls. "Do you honestly have nothing better to do than try and bring others down? Have you not grown up whatsoever?" she asked icily. Setsuna stepped forward with a smirk, staring Sakura straight in the eye. The Pinket didn't back down, staring back with equal intensity. She would not be intimidated, especially not by a spoiled brat who likely couldn't even throw a shuriken properly. "Come on, Sakura-chan, you know it's true, why the hell would Sasu-kun, or any man, want someone like you? You trained under Tsunade, and both of you have quite the reputation, not in a good way, either. What man would want a woman with monster strength and an equally terrifying temper?" Setsuna said, the smirk never leaving her face and her eyes never leaving Sakura's. The Pincat could feel old wounds resurfacing, and she took a deep breath. She tried to will the memories away, but it was close to impossible. She'd struggled with insecurities her entire life, and even though it'd gotten a bit better with time, they were still there. She continued taking deep, slow breaths, willing herself to calm down. "Come on, Sakura, get yourself together, you can't hit a civilian, no matter how much you'd like to," she thought. "I can't believe I ended up following her after all, have I no self-control?" Sasuke thought to himself, utterly annoyed. After watching his female teammate leave in such a rush, determined to avoid him once again, Sasuke told himself he'd just let her go. However, after standing there in the hallway outside of Tsunade's office like a dumbass for a few minutes, he realized he simply couldn't help but follow after her. Sakura had always been rather easy for him to read, but now she just confused him. He still didn't understand her motives, and that bothered him greatly. What bothered him even more is the fact that he even cared. He was Sasuke Uchiha, and he didn't go out of his way to chase after anyone, especially not a girl. A strong, interesting, beautiful girl. Wait, what? The Uchiha quickly shook his head in an attempt to clear it, not liking the direction his thoughts were going. He focused on walking through the village square, in the direction of the hospital. It wasn't that far of a walk, and surely Sakura must have made it there already. He wondered which department she was working in, he'd have to ask someone once he made it there. Sasuke suddenly stopped in his tracks upon recognizing a familiar chakra signature. He ducked into an alley and masked his chakra so that she wouldn't sense his presence. He was sure Sakura would have made it to the hospital already. Poking his head out of the alleyway, he saw his pink-haired teammate with 3 other girls. One of the girls was in Sakura's face. And he recognized her as the girl who had nearly won the auction before the Pincat had saved him. Not usually one to eavesdrop, but not really caring at the moment, he focused on listening to what was being said. "I'm going to ask you politely to step aside so I can get to work. I advise you to listen to me." "Well, I'm still being nice," Sakura seethed. What's the matter, can't handle the truth? The blonde girl asked. She obviously can't, she never could. Remember how she used to always do nothing but sit and cry whenever we'd pick on her? Never even did anything to fight back. You really make this too easy, Sakura, just accept the fact that not only will Sasuke-kun never love you, but no man will ever love you. The brunette screeched. Sakura growled and balled up her fists, quickly losing her patience. She wanted nothing more than to knock all of them out with one punch, however, she knew that she could easily kill them if she wasn't careful. It killed her that she could really do nothing except sit there and take their insults. Setsuna smirked at the Pinket, knowing that they were getting to her, she flipped her hair over her shoulder and proceeded to go on another vicious rant. I know the truth hurts, honey, maybe you should consider completely changing up your look, your pink hair is hideous, but that can easily be remedied with some hair dye, your body will be harder to fix though, you have no curves whatsoever, not to mention no tits, have you ever considered getting breast implants? She said cruelly, batting her eyelashes with a fake smile. Sasuke couldn't believe his ears, his fists balled up at his sides, and he was ready to attack those three spoiled brats. The fact that they could say those horrible things to Sakura made his blood boil. Did they have no idea who they were messing with? His teammate had trained under Tsunade herself. Not only did she have monster strength, she had incredible intelligence. Just as he was getting ready to jump out of the alley and teach the girls a lesson, Sakura shocked him. The medic simply rolled her eyes and let out a deep breath. She eyed the three girls and decided that she was finished with being nice. She wasn't one that went around flaunting her strength and talents just for the hell of it, but she figured if she couldn't give these girls a physical beatdown, she could sure as hell give them a verbal beatdown. Alright, this has gone on long enough, I don't have to listen to this nonsense, I am the student of the Hokage herself, and am not the same weak little girl I once was, I have friends and family whom I love dearly, and who love me in return, am the second best medic in the land of fire, and I have a good job doing what I love, tell me. What do you three have going for you besides being spoiled bullies who have everything handed to them on a silver platter? Sakura asked, her own smirk now in place. The three girls simply stood there with wide eyes, mouths agape, it was obvious that they were having trouble formulating a response. Sakura's smirk only widened, and she didn't wait for them to say anything, she instead opted to brush past them and continue on her way, completely ignoring their presence. Sasuke had his own smirk on his face now, beyond proud of his teammate, he was amazed at how brave she was, and how she stood up to the girls and their poisonous words so effortlessly. His satisfaction was short-lived, however, and he watched in horror as Setsuna pulled a knife out of her pocket and grabbed Sakura by the hair. What was that, you fucking bitch? She screamed in rage. Sakura gasped as she saw the knife in Setsuna's hand and was prepared to evade it when Sasuke suddenly appeared. The Uchiha grabbed both of Setsuna's arms and squeezed, effectively making her let go of both Sakura's hair and her knife. What the hell do you think you're doing? Sasuke boomed, Sharingan activating without him realizing it. The Pinket and the three bullies looked at him in astonishment, wondering where he'd come from. Sakura frowned to herself. Was he eavesdropping? Did he jump in because he didn't think I could take care of myself? The girls paid no mind to Sasuke's irritated state and forgot all about Sakura as they proceeded to surround the Raven. Fancy seeing you here, Sasuke-kun. The blonde giggled. Yeah, we were just talking about you. All good things, of course, gosh, has anyone ever told you just how handsome you are? The brunette asked dreamily. Sasuke growled at the girls and glared heavily at them. I suggest you shut up and get the hell out of here before this gets very ugly, he hissed, growing increasingly irritated. Setsuna gave what she hoped was a cute pout and strutted up to Sasuke, putting a hand on his chest and looking up at him. Oh, Sasuke-kun, don't be like that, you have three beautiful girls here who want nothing more than to make your day, won't you like that? Sasuke's glare only intensified, the only thing that will make my day is for you to get the fuck off of me, he growled. Setsuna frowned and backed off, finally realizing that maybe she shouldn't anger him anymore. Come on girls, maybe we should go, well see you soon, Sasuke-kun. She exclaimed. With that, the three girls ran off, but not before sending nasty glares Sakura's way. Sasuke gave a sigh of relief, glad that the bullies were gone. He turned to face Sakura, who was staring at him with an unreadable expression. This bothered Sasuke greatly. He walked up to her and stopped a couple of feet in front of her, unconsciously scanning her body for any sign of injury. Are you okay? He asked. I'm fine, Sasuke-kun, I was fine before you interfered, I could have handled those girls myself, she replied, irritated. The Raven frowned at this, when I saw that brat pull a knife on you, I couldn't just stand by and do nothing, he retorted. That's another thing, why are you following me? Sakura asked with a frown. Sasuke didn't reply for a moment, he looked around and noticed that they had created a scene, there were some vendors and civilians staring at the pair, and the Raven sighed in irritation, running a hand through his hair, they were in the middle of the village square, after all. Let's talk somewhere a little more private, he said, turning on his heel and walking toward the alleyway had just come from. Sakura followed him, and the two ducked into the alleyway for a little more privacy. They didn't need the whole village knowing their business. People talked like crazy, especially the civilians. The pin cat crossed her arms and looked up at the Uchiha, waiting for an explanation. The reason I'm following you is because I want a proper explanation. You placed such a high bid at the auction, yet you don't want the prize. You've been avoiding me like the plague since I returned to the village, and now it's even worse. The medic gulped and unconsciously wrapped her arms around herself as a form of protection. She looked away into nothingness, anything to avoid his gaze. This wasn't a conversation she wanted to be having. I don't know why I did it, I just didn't want you to end up with someone you didn't want to be with. I didn't want you to end up with someone who would bother you. I care about you a lot, Sasuke-kun. I just want you to be happy, and I know that Tsunade-sama's enforcement of the whole date thing has you less than thrilled, she answered, still looking away. The raven stood there in shock, staring at her and not quite knowing what to say. What was there to say? What did this mean? What should he do? All of these questions raced through Sasuke's mind as he stared at her in silence. Sakura finally built up the courage to look back at him, and his lack of a response hurt her. That's just looking at me in silent contempt, she thought sadly. The medic cleared her throat awkwardly and looked down at her watch. She needed to get out of the situation, and quickly, I'm sorry, Sasuke-kun, I really need to get back to work, she said, making her way out of the alleyway. As she walked away, Sakura realized that she probably wasn't being fair. She truly was grateful to him for stepping in and saving her, even though she knew she could have handled it herself. Suddenly, a memory struck her. The pin cat stopped in her tracks and turned halfway around to face Sasuke, who was still staring after her. With a small pained smile, she uttered 3 simple words. Sasuke-kun, thank you. With that, the pin cat walked away. The screeching of 1,000 birds roared through the air as a burst of electricity splintered the unfortunate tree in Sasuke's path. It'd been 3 days since the incident with Sakura, and the raven hadn't heard a peep from her since. Of course she'd avoid him, after all, that had been the norm since he'd returned to the village, and especially after that damn auction, over the past few days. Sasuke had found himself wanting to seek the pin cat out, however, his pride had stopped him. After all, Uchiha's don't just chase after girls and offer up sappy apologies. She had clearly overreacted. Couldn't she see that he was just concerned about her? Unfortunately for him, her words and the image of her retreating back had haunted him ever since their last encounter. Hell, had even had a hard time sleeping over it. How could he have been so stupid? Why did he have to interfere? It wasn't like him whatsoever, and those stupid bullies were civilians for crying out loud. Satsuna hadn't even pulled out a kunai, it was only a pocket knife, but in that moment, watching her wave the weapon at his teammate, the tiny pocket knife had looked like a massive blade. Instinct and protectiveness had kicked in, and had reacted without thinking. Reacting without thinking, that seems to happen a lot when it comes to those annoying teammates of mine, Sasuke thought. The raven knew that Sakura was more than capable of defending herself. The girl had taken down an Akatsuki member and played a major role in the war. She could have taken out those girls with her eyes closed, so why the hell had he reacted so strongly? Even more than that, why did he care so much, to the point of losing sleep over it? She was just a teammate, and she'd get over it eventually. Sighing to himself, Sasuke took a seat on the ground and leaned against what was left of the tree he'd just destroyed. His racing thoughts even made it hard to focus on training. It was then that he decided it was time to be honest with himself, and with Sakura as well. He knew exactly why he cared about her so much, and knew damn well that she wasn't just a teammate. Ever since Tsunade came up with the ridiculous auction idea, had said that the only woman he wouldn't be completely opposed to dating was Sakura, though things had been tense between them since had returned to Konoha. She was still the woman had always been most comfortable with besides his mother. The pin cat was strong, intelligent, and beautiful. During the last few days, had a lot of time to look inside of himself and reflect on things. She'd loved him once, and over the years he spent so much time ignoring things like romance in favor of achieving the goals he'd set for himself. He now realized that he loved her too. For exactly how long, he wasn't sure. All he knew was that it'd been for a while, and had been pushing it back. Now he worried that it was too little too late. There was no guarantee that she still felt the same way. Even if she did bid to win the date with him, it was more than likely just a pity bid. After everything that had happened, Sasuke was sure that Sakura had to hate him. He refused to acknowledge just how much that thought made his chest constrict painfully. Sasuke-kun, thank you. Though as Sasuke remembered those haunting words, he didn't know what to believe. He thought back to her confession to him when they were 13. They were so young back then. Now Sakura had clearly thrown his words back at him, and he wasn't sure what to make of it. They both remembered that intimate moment shared between them and them alone. Did she still love him? Or was she letting him know she'd moved on? Instead of seeking her out, he'd give her space. Their date was just a couple of days away, and then they'd talk things out once and for all. Sakura sat in her office, a large stack of medical files on her desk. To most people, the insane amount of work would cause nothing but a feeling of dread. Sakura Haruno wasn't most people. She thrived on working, thrived on the challenges that presented themselves from day to day. It was during times like this where she was having an internal crisis. But she was especially thankful for her hefty workload. Picking up the first file and making some notes, the Pincat attempted to focus on the task at hand. Unfortunately for her, it didn't take very long before her mind started racing. She'd been avoiding Sasuke for the last few days and knew that she couldn't keep it up forever. Their date was in just a couple of days, and Tsunade had made it clear that if she tried to run away, there would be dire consequences. Knowing her master, she probably wouldn't be allowed to work for a while. That simply could not happen, especially since she now had to worry about paying off that stupid impulsive bid. While going on a date with Sasuke had been one of her longtime dreams, she never wanted it to be under these circumstances. She wanted the Raven to fall for her and ask her out himself, not be forced into dating her. It was clear to Sakura that the Raven would never return her feelings, and she'd been trying to accept that fact. That's a large part of the reason she'd avoided him even before the auction. Just seeing his face or hearing his voice made feelings that she'd been trying to fight against rise to the surface with a vengeance. Then there was the fact that Sasuke obviously didn't think she could take care of herself. Alright, maybe she was overreacting, maybe he was just being a concerned teammate. If she was being honest with herself, the fact that the Raven interfered almost made her happy. It gave her hope that maybe he didn't hate her after all. If he didn't care about her, he could have just stood by and ignored it. But he didn't. That had to count for something, right? Forehead. Earth to forehead. Sakura was immediately shaken from her thoughts by the screeching of the village pig. She looked up at the blonde woman in mild annoyance. "What is it, pig?" "I'm trying to work here," Sakura grumbled. Ino let out a very unladylike snort. "Is that why you've been staring at the same page in that file for the last 5 minutes?" Ignoring the comment, Sakura merely let out a tired sigh. "Seriously, what are you doing here at the hospital? It's your day off." Ino grinned and took it upon herself to take a seat on Sakura's desk, much to the latter's annoyance. "I'm here to kidnap you, girlie. You've been throwing yourself into your work ever since the festival. I know it has to do with the auction. Let's go out and take your mind off of it. You like tea shops, right?" The blonde babbled excitedly. The Pincat was tempted to decline the blonde's offer, though the more she thought about it, the more she realized that maybe she needed the girl time. After all, she had been completely distracted by her racing thoughts. Clearly, no work would be getting done for the time being. Accepting the situation for what it was, Sakura agreed. "Fine, led the way, pig." It was a beautiful day outside, and the walk through the village square was peaceful. Mothers were out with their children, and some people were even out walking their dogs while enjoying the sunshine. Sakura smiled to herself while Ino rambled about the latest fashion trends. The Pincat was glad she'd taken the blonde up on her offer. Ino led her to a tea shop that she wasn't familiar with. And the girls were told to sit anywhere they'd like. As soon as they sat down, Sakura picked up on a familiar chakra signature. Ino grinned at the look on Sakura's face. "Is that?" Sakura trailed off. "It is. Now hurry up and mask your chakra before he notices us," Ino replied. The medic rolled her eyes but complied with the request anyway. On the other side of the tea shop sat the insensitive asshole of her team, Sai. Seated in front of him was the elderly woman who'd placed the winning bid on him. So her and Ino had stumbled upon their date, had they? Sakura was sure that the elderly woman was regretting her decision to bid on the artist. "I'm glad you knocked him out." Sakura couldn't help but snicker as she remembered the woman's words. Oh yeah, she was regretting her decision alright. Her smile quickly turned into a frown as she saw Ino watching the two like a hawk. Honestly, the blonde could be so childish sometimes. "You totally knew they were here," Sakura accused. "Of course I did. I couldn't give up the chance to spy on Sai and his date," Ino replied, turning her attention back to the Pincat for the moment. "Wait, come to think of it, isn't Kiba supposed to be on his date right about now as well? You two seemed rather flirty at the festival. Why are we here and not out looking for him?" At the mention of Kiba's name, Ino frowned and crossed her arms with an angry huff. "Screw that player. Yesterday I spotted him out with two girls within a few hours of each other. Hell, flirt with anything with a vagina. I should have known better," she growled. Sakura shook her head at her friend, deciding not to discuss it any further. To be honest, she wasn't surprised. Their waitress brought them some tea and then took their orders before walking away with a pleasant smile. The girls turned their attention back to Sai, and the medic couldn't help but smirk at the sight before her. "So Iwa, how do you like the rice?" Sai asked, taking a bite of his own rice. The elderly woman rolled her eyes at the much younger man, utterly annoyed with him. Why the hell had she placed a bid on this guy anyway? She really needed to stop going after the young ones. After all, she wasn't a spring chicken anymore. "How many times do I need to tell you that my name isn't Iwa? I'm from Iowa. My name is Kokona." Right, Nana, but that still doesn't answer my question about the rice, you may want to get your hearing checked, he replied. Dakona took a deep breath, willing herself to calm down. She wasn't sure if the man sitting in front of her was really that rude or if he was just a complete idiot wanting to get her money's worth. She decided that maybe she should try to salvage the date, attempting to think of something to do after the tea shop. She suddenly smiled as a thought struck her. The rice is fine, would you like to go to the park after this? It's a beautiful day out, she said patiently. Sai tilted his head to the side, looking utterly confused. Actually, he was staring at her as if she was crazy. Why would we do that? The park is like half a mile from here, you'd probably break a hip or keel over on the way. Any and all patience that Kakona had immediately went out the window. This asshole had no manners and she had finally had enough. She stood up and pointed at the artist accusingly. You inky-eyed, puffy-lipped, snowman-skinned fucker. The artist regarded the woman with a smile, genuinely happy for some reason. Why, thank you. Does this mean we're friends now? Sai wasn't sure what to think when the woman threw her drink at him and stormed out of the shop. People were so confusing with their emotions and their ways of social interaction. On the other side of the shop, Ino and Sakura gaped at the scene in wonder. How someone could be so clueless, neither of them had any idea. Sakura was the first to break the silence. Honestly, I have no idea how Sai can be so stupid. He certainly isn't charming in the slightest. I almost feel bad for him, she said. Well, he did call me beautiful that one time, maybe there's some hope for him, Ino muttered. Sakura raised an eyebrow at the way Ino was looking to the side, and she could swear there was a slight blush on her cheeks. No way you like Sai, don't you? Before Ino could respond, the waitress came by with their food. The blonde dug into the dish immediately, and for once it seemed like she didn't know what to say. Sakura simply smiled and shook her head slightly, deciding to let it slide for now. She glanced in Sei's direction and realized that he had noticed them. He seemed to be watching Ino's back, and the pinkette smile only widened. Maybe you're right, Ino, Sakura said softly. What you say? I couldn't quite hear you, the blonde replied. Rather than answer her friend, she simply kept eating her food with a smile on her face. Elsewhere in town, Kiba was on his date as well. The woman who'd placed a winning bid on him was from Sunagakure and had learned that her name was Midori. The Inyazuka had decided to take her to the dog park with Akamaru so she could get to know his beloved companion as well. After all, the two were a package deal. Midori reached a hand out to pet Akamaru, who seemed to appreciate her attention. He nuzzled into her hand, and she couldn't help but giggle happily. He may be twice her size, but he was a big baby. The woman was usually afraid of dogs, but she'd make an exception this time. She looked up at Kiba, smile still present on her face. How long have you had Akamaru? You two seem very close, she asked. About 10 years now, and going strong. Of course we're close, Hess my best friend, isn't that right, Akamaru? The dog simply let out a bark in agreement, still savoring the attention he was receiving from Midori. The woman noticed that even though Kiba did seem charming and great with animals, he seemed to have an almost unhealthy attachment with his dog. Loving animals was fine, but it seemed to be all he talked about. No matter how many times Midori tried to ask him about himself, all of his answers had something to do with dogs, this or that. She found herself wondering if maybe something traumatic had happened to the brunette to where he found comfort in his furry companion. So, when Iruka-sensei yelled at me for bringing my dog to class, Akamaru went and peed on his sandals. Oh man, it was hilarious, you should have been there. Kiba exclaimed, scratching his furry companion behind the ears. Midori forced herself to keep smiling, not wanting to seem rude. She wished that Kiba would ask her about herself, but he didn't seem interested in knowing much about her, seemingly picking up on the girl's discomfort. The brunette changed tactics. Enough about myself and Akamaru, I want to know more about the lovely lady sitting in front of me. Do you have any pets of your own? He inquired, giving her a handsome grin. Well, it was still centered around pets, but at least he wanted to know more about her. It was a start, at least. Midori figured she'd take whatever she could get. I don't actually, I am not usually much of a dog person, but Akamaru has charmed me so much that I may actually reconsider that. I'm allergic to cats, so that's out of the question. The only pet I had growing up was a goldfish, she said sheepishly. At least it wasn't a cat. Goldfish, I can handle. If you ever do decide to get a dog one day, I can give you some tips on how to train them. I would definitely appreciate that, Midori replied with a smile. Even though Kiba did seem really obsessed with dogs, he still seemed like a decent enough guy. He was extremely handsome and was charming in his own way, maybe a little into himself, but wasn't that to be expected to some degree? He was still only 17 and maybe had mature a bit in the coming years. Wait, why am I thinking about the future with him already? This is only our first date, calm down, girly. Midori thought with a blush, hoping he wouldn't see it. Of course, Kiba's trained eyes won't miss such a thing, he was a ninja, after all. He scooted a little closer to her, making her blush even more. My, you're even more beautiful when you're blushing, he said smoothly. Oh my gosh, he's so close, why is he so close? Is he going to kiss me? Do I want him to kiss me? He's so handsome, what is even happening right now? Kiba and Yuzuka. Who in the world is this girl, and why are you sitting so close to her? The two teens immediately pulled away from each other at the sound of a very angry voice in the distance. A woman with blue hair was stalking towards them and appeared very pissed off. Midori was utterly confused and Kiba looked like a deer caught in headlights. The blue-haired woman stopped in front of them and put her hands on her hips. Well, Kiba. I'm waiting. Kiba. Who is this woman and why is she looking down at us like she wants to punch us? Midori asked, catching on to the situation. The Yuzuka opened his mouth to reply, but the woman in front of them beat him to the punch. Who am I? I am Kiba's girlfriend, or I thought I was. We went on a few dates and he seemed interested. Of course, he never told me he wasn't being exclusive, she said with a growl. The dog lover rubbed the back of his head sheepishly, wondering how in the hell he was going to get himself out of this one. Unfortunately for him, it seemed that the jig was up. Now girls, I can explain. Midori promptly stood up from the bench they were sitting on and pointed an accusing finger at the man. You player. You knew you were seeing other women, yet you agreed to be part of that stupid auction. Have you no shame? Even if it had mentioned anything to our Hokage, she wouldn't have let me get out of it. My friend Naruto tried getting out of the auction for that very reason and she still made him go through with it. Kiba exclaimed, throwing his hands up in defense. You still could have told me if you were seeing other people. Now I feel like a fool to think I almost fell for you. Midori shot back, clearly hurt. For some reason, the hurt in her eyes really shook Kiba to his core. She seemed like a nice girl, and he felt bad for hurting her like that. He realized that maybe his playboy ways did more harm than good. Just as he opened his mouth to apologize, Midori put her hand up to silence him. I don't care what you have to say, I don't want to hear it. Look, I didn't want to ruin your date or anything. I'm sorry you had to find out Kiba's a player, but I didn't even know myself until I saw you two together, the blue-haired woman said quietly. Yo, blue hair, that's nice and all, but you did in fact ruin my date. This kind girl paid good money for a chance with me. Kiba exclaimed. Blue hair? Do you even know my name? Kiba didn't even have a chance to try coming up with an excuse. After a hard slap from each woman, they both walked away without a word, sighing to himself, but realizing it was probably his fault, he sat back down on the bench. Well, at least I've got you, Akamaru. I wonder what he knows up to. Some people never learn. It was 2:55 in the afternoon and Tamari was supposed to be at his house in just a few minutes. Pulling himself off of the couch with a yawn, Shikamaru gathered a few empty takeout boxes and threw them away. The only thing the lazy genius could think was how troublesome this whole situation was. First he gets forced to participate in an auction where he himself is the prize. And now he had to go on a date with one of the scariest women he knew. The two of them hadn't even discussed any details of what they'd be doing. The date was bound to be super awkward. Sure, they'd spent a fair bit of time together over the years, with him acting as her escort during her visits to the village. However, he wasn't sure dating her was a great idea. They lived in different villages, she was scary, and he couldn't be bothered to do anything. Would they really make a good match? Gosh, so troublesome, he thought with a sigh. He was broken out of his thoughts by a knock on his door. With a final sigh and shake of the head, Shikamaru answered the door. He had to admit that he was slightly taken aback by what he saw. Tamari had her hair down, rather than in its usual style. She wore a sea green kimono with a slit down the side that went down to her ankles. Nodding in greeting and stepping aside to let her in, Shikamaru couldn't help but think that she almost looked pretty, more than pretty. She'd clearly dressed to impress, but why? He was just an average guy, nothing special, plus, there were no romantic feelings between them, at least, that's what he kept trying to tell himself all of these years. Are you going to keep staring at me, or are you going to ask me if I'd like to sit down? The blonde asked teasingly. Resisting the urge to roll his eyes at her, he gestured to his couch. It's not like you haven't been here before, make yourself at home, he said, making his way to the kitchen. Would you like some tea? That would be lovely, thank you, Tamari replied, sitting on the couch and smoothing out her kimono. As Tamari waited for Shikamaru to finish preparing the tea, she couldn't help but wonder why the hell she went and got herself into this situation. If she was being honest with herself, she'd fallen for the lazy genius a long time ago. She always looked forward to her visits to the village, mainly because she got to spend time with him. He was intelligent, handsome, and she enjoyed his company. However, she had no idea if he felt the same way about her. He seemed content doing nothing but staring at the clouds all day. Did he even think of romance? She was broken from her thoughts by the sound of footsteps approaching her. Shikamaru held out the tea to her, which she accepted with a word of thanks. He sat down next to her with his own tea, and an awkward silence ensued. Feeling extremely uncomfortable for some reason, the genius was the first to speak. So, I know we didn't discuss the details of this whole thing. I'm not sure what you want to do," he said, before taking a sip of his tea. "I wasn't sure myself, but I heard that there's a festival happening nearby," she replied. Truthfully, Shikamaru wasn't too keen on that idea whatsoever. Had enough of festivals, especially after being forced into the auction. It'd be a while before he'd want to go to another one, but he wasn't sure if it was important to Tamari or not. "It seems like there's a festival going on every week," he said, internally wincing at how disinterested he sounded. "Ah, that's true, you won't be interested in something like that. Attending an event like that together might make us seem like a couple, anyway." The genius couldn't help but snap to attention at how hurt she sounded. She made it seem as if he thought being in her presence was the last thing he wanted. That couldn't be further from the truth. He enjoyed spending time with her more than he'd like to admit. Yes, she was scary, however, she was also strong, intelligent, and beautiful. Truth be told, if anyone had to win a date with him, he was glad it was her. Shikamaru was lost in his thoughts for a while, and Tamari took his silence as confirmation that he really couldn't care less about their date. Never one to beat around the bush, she decided she'd better take her leave before she endured any further embarrassment. With that thought in mind, she set her tea down and stood up. "I actually just remembered that I promised Gara I'd help him with something urgent. I should get going," she lied quickly, wincing at how stupid she sounded. "Tamari. No, I insist, I really need to get going. There's no use staying here with someone who thinks being around me is just troublesome," she snapped, making her way towards the door. Suddenly, the blonde felt a warm hand on her wrist, her eyes widened as she was turned around and pulled into a tight embrace. She hit Shikamaru's chest with a squeak and instinctively wrapped her arms around him. Why in the world was he doing this? "Don't be so upset, please, what you're thinking is wrong. I like you, you troublesome woman," he said, holding her to him securely. "I like you, too, but why did you act so disinterested all of this time? Honestly, you're intimidating, and I didn't want to ruin our friendship, or whatever the hell we are," he admitted. The blonde couldn't help but chuckle at his reasoning, but she understood it. Words couldn't describe how happy she was that Shikamaru liked her after all. Perhaps the date could be saved. Their only challenge now was to figure out what they wanted to do. Tamari pulled away from him and smiled brightly, her mood lifted. "Funny how things work out, huh? Now that we've gotten the awkwardness out of the way, why don't we figure out what to do?" she suggested before looking out the window. Shikamaru followed her gaze, but couldn't tell what she was looking at. Women could be so confusing sometimes. "What are you looking at?" "It's a beautiful day outside. The clouds are especially pretty today," she mused. "You enjoy cloud gazing too?" "I admit that I never really took notice of such things until I started hanging around you. I admire how you enjoy the simple things," Tamari replied with a shrug. Considering her words, Shikamaru went to his hall closet to grab none other than a shogi board. He wasn't sure how she'd feel about it, but he felt that there was nothing better than a game of shogi on a nice day. "Would you be up to playing a game of shogi on the porch? After that, maybe we can stop by that festival you were talking about. They usually have fireworks, right?" The blonde's face immediately lit up at the suggestion, and she truly appreciated him trying to compromise with her. Giving an eager nod, she immediately took the board from him. "Race you outside," she said, before taking off. "Thanks for watching."